Secret Circle.
And welcome back to The Secret Circle with me, Dr. Luke Decker, the podcast where I chat with authors, filmmakers, musicians, and more about the art of their craft and let you in on some of their secrets. Today's guest is podcast extraordinaire, the host of the popular podcast Always Hold On to Smallville, Zach Moore. We're going to be talking about all sorts of Smallville, Superman, DC Comics stuff today, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So without further ado, let's bring Zach on. Zach, welcome to the show.
Hello there.
Hello. How's it going in sunny wherever you are?
It's great. It's great and sunny wherever I am. Let me tell you.
Good. I'm glad. So you're known for doing your Always Hold On to Smallville podcast. It's a huge podcast that people love, and you deep dive every week into an episode of Smallville from the first season all the way through. And you're on what season is it 9? You're on 9, right?
Yeah, I'm
9,
about 2/3 of the way through season 9.
Yeah, so it's the end is nigh, which is
Mm.
probably nerve-wracking.
Oh, yeah, I'm very conflicted.
Yeah.
It's been a journey, but it's been doing this for a long time, right? So
Yeah.
it's exciting to kind of reach the end, but then it's a closing of a chapter, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So before we like dive into stuff, I want to learn a little bit about your history with Superman.
mhm.
Was he a character that you grew up with, that you loved from a small boy to, or did you come to him at what point in your life? What was it about, or when did you sort of first encounter this character and be like, this is the bee's knees?
Yeah. So I grew up watching the Christopher Reeve movies.
Mm.
Also the George Reeves TV show, the George Reeves TV show Adventures of Superman. It was on when I was a kid. It was on Nick at Night. So it was on Nickelodeon.
Yes.
It would come on with the Dick Van Dyke Show or Mr. Ed or whatever else was on.
Yes.
And so I watched a lot of that. I remember I had a little trampoline and I would jump around in my Superman costume watching that show. And then my parents had tapes of the Christopher Reeve movies, the first 2 Christopher Reeve movies.
Yes.
So I watched those on repeat. Not so much 3 and 4 for various reasons, but that was my formative Superman stuff. Also, my dad had collected comic books and he was a DC guy. And
Okay.
so I inherited a lot of those and read a lot of those. My first foray into comic books there. And then when you're a kid, your parents take you to comic book stores and you get, whatever's on sale or whatever. Oh, Superman, you get what you get. So I didn't really start collecting comics myself probably till later in life, like for comics that were like mine,
Yeah.
But then multimedia has always really been my thing. And, whenever there was a new Superman thing going on, like the animated series, the DCAU was big. Batman is the big one there. It's funny because Superman and the DCAU, Superman the animated series is good. It's fine. But it's the worst of the shows, like the least good of the shows, because you have Batman the animated series, Batman Beyond, Justice League Unlimited. Like these are iconic shows. So it's like he gets lost in the shuffle there. But that was that was always around too. And then of course Smallville showed up when I was in high school.
Of course, Smallville. Recently, I might have been at Christmas time. I finally bit the bullet and bought the Superman, the Blu-ray for the animated series of Superman. And I watched about the first 3 or 4 episodes. So they sort of tell one continuous story of the origins, basically.
Yeah, three-part to start the show.
Yeah, and I really liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I remember watching it as a kid, but as you say, I definitely watched more Batman, more Justice League than I did the Superman. Superman was always followed. I feel like it was always followed by Batman was first, and then Superman came on. And it's like, do you want to hang around for Superman? Well, we'll see.
I will say, I think the villains on that show are all the best versions of the Superman villains, like Brainiac, Metallo, Mxyzptlk, Darkseid. Like these are perfect versions of these characters, and so to me that's the strongest part of the whole show.
Yeah, I think we were spoiled in the 90s with the animated stuff because I can't think of a single superhero cartoon when we were kids that didn't nail the characters like almost perfectly. Like X-Men was for me pitch perfect, Spider-Man was pitch perfect, Batman all of the Batman cartoons were excellent. I enjoyed when I watched Superman. I did enjoy it, but it just got lost in the shuffle. Justice League, all the Justice League cartoons were great. Like I feel like we were spoiled. I don't know. I don't know about shows today, animated stuff today. I don't watch as much of that now, but I think we were lucky. I feel like we were lucky.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as in tune with what's coming out today, obviously either. But I think that stuff holds up. Batman the Animated Series holds up, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's because they were making it really for all audiences.
Yes. Yeah.
Mature themes, and like you could sit down and watch it like a random episode of Batman the Animated Series, like a mini movie. I
Yes.
mean, it just
Yeah.
it tracks, and so and it's hard to say what's nostalgia and what's not, because you think to yourself,
Mhm.
had you grown up with something else, would that be like the gold standard for you? I don't know, but
Yes.
I do think objectively, especially of all the shows, the Batman the Animated Series in that universe
Yeah.
definitely holds up.
Yeah, I think so. And it's tricky because you do see this stuff on Twitter sometimes. You see like someone be like, "Oh my god, they'll talk about like the Ninja Turtles cartoon from like 2005. This was the best thing ever." And I was like, "Hold on there, Tiny. Like, back in my day,
Right.
this was the gold standard." But yeah, it is tricky with that. But I agree with you that I think the stuff from that period particularly was it was a unique kind of excellence that I think
Mm,
transcends and is probably why people still watch it. It's why they're dumping it all on Netflix and stuff
yeah.
because it's still attracting people. It was written with the quality of the animation, the voice work. It was all so good, and it nails all the characters so well that it's like this is probably a timeless cartoon now in the way that like Looney Tunes is rather timeless. Like people just love that stuff.
Hmm.
But yeah. So Smallville was a big part of your life in high school. It was a big part of my life. I'm interested to know, when did you jump into Smallville? Were you there from the beginning, or did you come in a little bit later after season one?
I came in slightly later. It's funny, we're talking so much about Batman there. Like I grew up kind of being a Superman fan first,
Yeah.
but then when we were kids in the early '90s, it's Batman. There's Batman
Yes.
movies, there's Batman animated shows,
Yeah.
got all these Batman toys,
Yeah.
right? And yes, there was Superman stuff around, but it wasn't as big and is permeating the pop culture back then.
Yeah.
So then I kind of at that phase of my life, I kind of become more of a Batman fan.
Yeah.
Um, but then 2001 comes along, Smallville. That kind of no, you're a Superman fan. This show is made specifically for you. That kind of
Yeah.
cemented him as my number one character.
Yeah.
No, I had not heard of this show. I did not wasn't counting down the days. I didn't, wasn't like, oh my god, Smallville's premiering tonight, everybody.
Yeah.
I remember I was with my dad, we're watching TV and we're flipping through the channels, and I'm like, man, that guy looks like Superman there. I'm like, that guy's bald. Like, they're saying small? Is this a Superman show? And, and as I understand it, because I don't like have the calendars or anything, but I was watching a rerun of Metamorphosis, the second episode,
Okay.
and I'm like, I gotta get on this.
Yeah.
So, we were a big VCR VHS family, so I start like setting
Same.
the VCR and
Yes.
and I had then the next episode I saw was like X-Ray, because they're repeating that one. That was a great episode. And then by the first one I had seen in first run as it came out was Rogue, the last episode of the first half of season one, I think,
Right.
with the cop, and that was a really good episode. The
Yes,
first season
it was.
episode. And then I was on board from there. Like, and then it's the early 2000s, so there are ways to find things that you missed online.
Yes.
I was filling in gaps there, and then I was on board ever since. I was like, how did I miss this? Why wasn't I told about this?
Yeah, yeah. I remember it was weird for me because it was recommended to me by my mom. My mom was like, "Oh, there's this show coming on called Smallville. It's about young Superman. We should watch it." So I actually it's one of the only shows that I remember actually sitting down and watching the premiere of. So I watched the premiere of it live, which is pretty cool. And there I was hooked from episode one. I think even if I had missed it and I came to it later, I still would have been hooked because it was, man, it was so good. For you though, what was it that drew you in? You're watching Metamorphosis, which is a classic episode, very very X-Filesy.
Yeah.
What was it about Metamorphosis that for you was like, oh my god, this is nailing Superman, like young Superman, so well.
Well, it was so intriguing that Lex Luthor and him are friends,
Mm,
and like that was fascinating. And then they have this kryptonite necklace and
yeah,
the unrequited love he had for Lana Lang, and how and then a little bit of superhero action, obviously with the Bug Boy that episode at the very
yeah,
end. So and then it's all sprinkled through, right?
yeah,
And then the song at the end, like the calling wherever you will go, I was like, "What is this? Is perfect. This is tailor made for me." And as people who've listened to my podcast have heard me say many, many, many times, I was the same age as Clark Kent on the show. Like he's a
yeah,
freshman in high school. Like I'm a freshman in high school. Like
yeah,
this is my life. This is great.
yep,
So all those elements drew me in. But I just like I don't know. I just you're seeing pieces that you really hadn't seen in the things before, right? I mean, usually these are the years you skip over, right? In the
yes,
movies, it's like he crash lands and now he's an adult, right?
yes,
Or TV shows or whatever. They're not about this part. Now there's little slivers of things in other versions, like in Superman the movie. There's that little Smallville section which really
yes,
informed this show. And that's the kind of Clark we have in an early show where he's like kind of a little bit of a social outcast, doesn't really fit in. Because we can all relate to that outsider part of it all, right?
yeah, yeah,
And so all those things, like all the teenage things were speaking to me at the time, and then also all the
yeah,
Superman things, and with a lot of exciting promise of what might come from these characters. So I was like, this is great.
yeah,
I'm in. But live action superhero TV shows, I mean, what are we talking about here? Like Lois and Clark was the last one, and I had
mm,
watched some of that on and off, but I'd never really like caught on to it
me
as
neither.
much. And I'd seen more like when it was on TNT and stuff, but
Yeah,
uh
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
it's like I feel like a lot of people our age did.
Yeah,
Um but that didn't really speak to me the same way, and this just hit all the right chords with me, man.
yeah. Because that's one thing that always interests me is why didn't Superman or Lois and Clark, why didn't that connect? Because that feels like that should have been something that we would have connected with. Because I remember watching it around the time Smallville repeats around the time Smallville was on, and it was much cheesier than I realized it was. Like,
Mhm.
when I was a kid, I sort of would see the trailer and, like, you'd see the flapping cape and stuff, and you would sort of it kinda gave me the impression that it was a, like, almost like a Mills and Boone style of Superman. Do you know Mills and Boone? Do you know what I mean?
No, what is that?
They make the supermarket, like, romantic novels that are really trashy
I
romantic
see.
novels,
I
right?
understand. Okay.
So I kind of got that vibe from it. It was like this was meant to be like sexy Superman. I was like, I don't really care about sexy Superman. This, I'm 7. This isn't
Mhm.
like I don't care about that. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think it was that didn't make it connect for people like us when we were kids?
Man, I don't know. I think that might be part of it because you're looking for superhero fights. You're looking for I don't know because I think that's what it is. I mean, it had a
Yeah,
specific. It had an audience. It found an audience. It was super
yeah,
popular, and it was a pop culture phenomenon. It really was.
yeah,
The posters and Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher were everywhere, and
yeah,
all those images of them together. But for people of our age at that time, I don't know. Maybe we thought it was boring. Maybe our parents weren't into it, so we weren't tuning into it, right? I mean, because so much of what
yeah.
you watch at
True,
that age is
true.
like what are your parents going to watch? Because like when you're watching cartoons or whatever on your own time,
Yeah,
do you think? But it's like when we were going to sit down and watch something together as a family, it was going to be like Star Trek. At
yes,
least me and my family. So that's what
yeah,
we were watching on, like the prime time family TV
exactly.
time. We weren't going to watch Lois and Clark. Now, close friend of mine, Matt Truex, right? He has a podcast, Lois and Clark, the new podcast of Superman.
Mm,
He's a little younger, but he really truly discovered the show when it was on TNT during reruns, and that
yeah,
really spoke to him.
interesting.
And he's done a whole thing about it. So it's like it's different. That's the thing. Like I'm glad there's such a variety of versions of Superman because
Yeah,
they all speak to different people. Like it's so interesting that the more I've podcasted and met more people and having conversations like I'm having with you right now about how you got into what you got into.
yeah,
There's some people that like they just like Smallville, or
yes,
they just like Lois and Clark, or they just like the Christopher Reeve movies. Like one does not necessarily mean you're
yeah,
gonna like them all. Like I like bits and pieces of everything.
yeah. Same.
To my own to this detriment. It's too much to watch and spend time with, right? Maybe I should expand my interest more. But yeah, I don't know. If had there been more like action packed Superman versus Metallo this week, there might have
Mm,
been because I don't like a kid. I feel like again talking about the George Reeves show. That really, as a kid, like it's a little half-hour Superman adventure, and
Yeah.
it's in the 50s, and there's not like he's not fighting supervillains, he's fighting mobsters and stuff. But there's something about like
Yes.
the structure of the show, and like, oh, I got to go save Lois, I got to go save Jimmy, I got to go find a way to. I don't know.
Yes.
There was something about that to spoke to a much younger me
Yes.
necessarily that I have more fond memory. And we kept watching again, and maybe that's my parents because they remember watching that when they were kids, and like, oh, we're gonna watch Chicken Night together, and this is the thing.
Right.
So that's that. Those are the only answers I can give you. I have no formula.
Yeah,
But
it's interesting. I wonder if it's part of like the mellow. I think maybe the age in which we were and the lack of interest in melodrama
mm,
that kind of put, at least for me, maybe that's what it was. But also you're right in terms of the sort of dexterity of Superman. Like there are so many iterations, and which brings me to another question I didn't really have planned, but there's some people who like to say that Superman is a dull character. He's boring for whatever reason. But I'm always sort of like, but is he though? Because I mean, how many times do we see him when in TV shows or movies and animated and stuff like that? Like, and Christopher Reeves is very different to Tom Welling, is very different to the dude off of Lois and Superman, or Superman and Lois. You know what I mean? And Dean Cain, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so is that what do you say when people come out with the whole like, oh, but Superman's just kind of a boring character, isn't he? Because he's just too powerful.
yeah, I find that like a lack of imagination because it's
Mm,
like because what's interesting, the more interesting things about Superman is why he chooses to be the way he is,
yeah,
what his worldviews are, and the things he has to fight. More interesting. I mean, Lex Luthor is his arch nemesis, right?
yeah.
He's not interesting because he's a dude in a battle suit. Although sometimes he's in a battle suit, and that's fine. He's interesting because he at least in post crisis anyway. He's interesting that he is, he represents, the worst parts of corporate America and business and red tape, right?
Yes.
And just like um the public opinions and things like that's what's so you can't punch your way out of a guy who's like has all this political and business
Yeah.
power and money, right?
Yeah.
And when Superman was invented in the 30s, he was a champion of the oppressed, right? The underdog, kind of
Mm,
everyman hero. And so that's the kind of like that ties into that, right? And then don't get me wrong, I love to see Superman fight Brainiac and Zod and all these things, right? But you can see anybody fight. You can see Thor fight a
yes.
monster or whatever, right? But Superman, like, but that's what makes it more interesting. So that's when people say that it's boring. I'm like, just think of something interesting to do. Like
Yeah.
tie into Clark Kent, tie into that the
Yeah.
personal connections, his parents, Lois,
Yeah.
Jimmy, Perry. Like, there's so much other stuff you can do with that. That yeah, because it could just be a generic like, how do we come up with someone who's strong enough to fight Superman today? That would get boring. And
Yes.
then yeah, I mean that's when people say that, I think that's where they're coming from. But I think there's so much more to the character uh, than those statements give him credit for.
Yeah, I agree. It's the psychology that and I think that's what won me over so much with Smallville. Was it's like, yeah, okay, he's got these powers. He could be like the big stud at school, but like he's not. It's his
Right.
psychological makeup is that he actually feels uncomfortable and he feels awkward and he feels, and I'm like it's that psychological like exploration of the character that's like that's the interesting stuff for me. We get some cool little fights here and there, some cool little saves. That's all like the cherry on top of
Hmm.
that stuff. But like diving into who, and I because that's the thing is I always find Clark more interesting than Superman, but like they're still one and the same, for me. So I think I think for me that's a big one of the reasons why when people say I'm like I think if you look more into that stuff and all the things that are hits like the Reeves films and with Smallville and things like that, they dive more into that. Whereas I mean I can't really say that Henry Cavill Superman didn't really. He's pretty basic.
No. I mean, I find I know that's a very divisive subject, but like uh, I know that like what was missing from that interpretation to me was the Clark Kent side, right? The
Yeah,
humanity side. Like, I mean, that's not what those movies. They weren't interested in exploring those things. They were talking about big mythology things, and that's fine.
yeah,
But there's something charming about the secret identity, because that's that's the hero fantasy of like, people, they think I'm a loser, but I'm really Superman. And then that's the Clark Kent thing. I'm going to go sneak away. I mean, Superman too, right? This bully beats him up and he's going to come back and beat him up. Right.
Yes.
And that's, it's a lighthearted revenge. That's how I describe, I've come to describe that as that, but, there's a great episode of Smallville in season 1. It's called Leech. And it's one where he loses his powers, to, one of the Ashmore brothers.
Yes.
To Iceman.
Iceman, yes.
John Ashmore, not Aaron Ashmore, who becomes Jimmy Olsen later on the show. Yeah. And one of the best exchanges on the show was like you're talking about, what spoke to you about this show? Like what like reeled you in? And of course, this is the first season, so we're still getting to know the show and the characters. But he confronts him at the end of the episode because this guy, through an accident of lightning and kryptonite, Shawn Ashmore has gotten Clark's powers. Mm-hmm. And so Clark knows if he uses Lana's necklace, Lana has his kryptonite necklace throughout the show, and at least in the early parts of the show, he's like, if I use this, I can weaken him and maybe stop him because he's going this rampage. He doesn't have the upbringing and the morals that were instilled to Clark that the Kents gave to him. This guy, he's got some bad parents, and the episode shows you that. So, like, Clark goes up to him at the end, and they confront each other, and Shawn Ashmore's like, "Come on, Clark. If you had the power to do anything in the world, what would you do?" And he's like, "I'd stop people like you." I'm like, "Oh yes, like that's even without his powers, that's what he's gonna do, and that's what he would choose to do, and that's the character that makes him more interesting than like, I'm a big strong guy that's gonna beat up the other big strong people."
Yes, yeah, I love that actually. Even though after that episode, once the recurring lose your power episode became 5 times a season.
Yeah.
But I do always enjoy the fact that even then he still goes. Like I love the episode in it's season 4. I'm pretty sure it's season 4, or it's the beginning. No, it's the beginning of season 5 when the kid takes over the nuclear asylum.
The 3rd episode of season 5. Yeah.
Hidden, yes. I love that bit when he and then he gets shot and shit. Like, and then it has like one of the coolest scenes in Smallville when he leaps up from the ground.
What a moment!
Bomb, and oh god, that was like
so good.
As a kid, when I watched that, I was like, I got chills. Like, oh my god, he basically fucking flew.
Yeah.
I was like, yes.
And this season 5, so you're like, oh man, here we go. Like, that's a top 10 Smallville moment.
Yo, god, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. I love that. Okay, so today, in today's saturated climate, we've had a lot of superhero shows. We've had what have we had? We've had Arrow, The Flash, Legends of Taboring, and what else have we had? I feel like there's been other Superman and Lois,
Supergirl, Black Lightning.
Yes. So many things. Do you think Smallville gets enough credit for laying the foundations for all of that stuff?
I don't think it does. I do think Arrow would not exist without Smallville, because the only reason Arrow existed is because Green Arrow became a supporting character on Smallville.
Yes.
I think The Flash is its own thing, because The Flash is a pretty mainstream character. He even had a show, which I love, the 1990 version of the Flash TV show. So there was like a lot of pop culture. Like The Flash would have existed maybe in its own form at some point.
Yeah.
But even shows like Supergirl and Superman and Lois, like these, you see the DNA of Smallville all over these shows.
Yes.
And for Smallville proved that you could do this. And on the WB and then the CWs, and then the CW is like, well, I guess we're the superhero network now, so let's start cranking out these shows. And I mean, there was a time, if you asked me around like 2013 or 14, whenever season 2 of Arrow was, I would have told you, I'm like, hey, listen, y'all, Arrow is better than Smallville ever was. Like, you would have heard that from me, because I'm like,
really,
the first couple seasons of Arrow I thought were fantastic, but it's only 2 seasons and they got to keep going. And and have a lot of new respect for Smallville, seeing how so many of these shows just kind of like sputtered out or had some serious dips and valleys. Some of them went, like, I think Arrow kind of went down, but then definitely went back up. Some of the other shows never recovered.
No,
they just spiraled out. And so you gotta give Smallville credit for 10 years of ups and downs for sure. But definitely, season 9 is one of my favorite seasons, and that's near the end of the show. 10 has some good stuff in there. So like, it wasn't like, oh, well, all my favorite seasons are the first 2 and everything else is bad after that, which is a common trend in a lot of shows. Yes. And then I think is especially those Arrowverse shows, even the really good ones like Arrow, like the first 2 are gold, and 5 is really good, but then it's kind of a mixed bag, and the Flash is just one of those that just keeps going down and never recovers.
Yeah. Oh my god. I told you. See, I never got into Arrow. I remember watching the first episode, and I think you've joked about this as well. As I'm like, that's Lex's mansion. You're just doing Batman Begins. Oh my god, I can't put up with this bullshit. And I dipped in every once in a while, but Arrow never really hooked me. I did get into the Flash for 2 seasons and 2 seasons only.
It's a good time to tap out. A good time to
Yeah,
tap out.
season 3 was like I did about couple of episodes in, I'm like, okay, it's another speedster villain. Like, fuck me. Like, I just can't. Like, come on, guys. Like, what you have cool stuff that you could be doing, and you're retreading. I just couldn't do it. I just the quality dropped for me, and I never went back to that. I think I did 1 season of Legends of Tomorrow, never went back.
It's a unique show. It has a very unique voice. I give it credit for being different.
Yes,
it has a lot of fun with it, as opposed to just like, I think most of the other ones got very formulaic. You had your guy in the chair and your team here. It's just like,
yes.
Man.
What bugged me about Legends of Tomorrow was that I loved Arthur Darvill, and like when he left the show, I was like, I love Doctor Who, and he was in Doctor Who, and I was like, great, I'll watch it for him. Yeah. And then when they kicked him out, I was like,
I get it. What? No, we've all been there. They're actors that we follow. There's shows I watched that would never watch. I watched season 3 of Lucifer.
Same,
because Tom Welling was on there, which actually was a pretty fun show. Actually,
that's a good.
I'll watch the other ones, but no, we follow people, so I get it, man. You know, I'll tell you this: Black Lightning. Did you watch Black Lightning?
No,
I recommend Black Lightning, especially the first season. I mean, it kind of has that same.
Yeah,
a lot of these shows have that trajectory, but I'm really, that first season was really solid, and a different angle than a lot of these other shows. But and I think kind of what you're getting at, you know, it's like you got all these shows now, and they're also like they become like this. It's hard to really separate what's what anymore. And and Smallville like set the template and really stood alone. I mean, if you go back and look at what was going on when Smallville was on there, Heroes came and went.
Yes.
And Smallville was still there. Like Heroes, this phenomenon. Talk about a 1 season kind of show. A global phenomenon, and then it just sputtered out. And meanwhile, Smallville's like, hey, we're still here, y'all.
It's true. It's true. It is impressive. And I will admit, like, I definitely have serious problems with Smallville seasons 8 through 10. It's a very frustrating 3 years for me. That said, there was still enough quality and consistency to keep me coming back week in and week out and wanting to see this through to the end. It didn't ever become like a hate watch sort of thing. It was like, I love these characters. I want to see where they're going. You're probably coming for me. You're coming across more bombs than you are roses.
There it is.
But it's still compared to some of these others, it still maintained itself. And there is a quite stark identity change from season 7 to 8, but 8 through 10, it retains its new identity, I think, in the way that it's presenting itself and presenting its new Smallville face, which I totally respect it for that.
I think it needed that after season 7.
It did. Season 7, is a bit like Quantum of Solace, the James Bond movie. It was hurt so bad by that writer's strike.
It's true
that one half of me was like, wow, Smallville was one of the only shows to produce more or less a full season, because I think they did 20 episodes.
They did 20, yeah.
And if I remember hearing, I could be wrong, but like they had to like rush to get scripts done before the strike happened. So I think there was like a push to sort of get it out, churn it out. And you can feel that. I mean, the Veritas stuff is nonsense. John Glover is all over Twitter saying how much he fucking hates the Veritas stuff.
John Glover?
True. John Glover or William Shatner. Who are these people?
Let me tell you what, I would never expect John Glover to have such hot takes on 1990s Batman movies, but I mean, he was in one of them, so maybe that is accurate. But anyway,
yeah, it's hard to tell. I
follow you though. Yeah,
it is hard to tell. It's hard to tell with it's funny watching these older dudes on Twitter, because I'm like, is it really you? If it is you, that's stinking hilarious.
Yeah.
If it's not, like, If it's just some PR person, like,
I'll tell you this though about season 7. And I agree with you. I'm like, what a mess. But Descent and Apocalypse are a couple of great episodes at the end of season
Yeah.
7 post
Yeah.
writer's strike.
Yeah.
But would I have traded those to have a more cohesive season that made sense?
Definitely.
Yes.
Come on. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And because also it was yeah, that ending was actually is really pretty good. That Brainiac stuff is pretty awesome. When I think, yeah, I love that stuff. But and then it also kind of feels like it was, you were shortchanged with Supergirl. Like, I feel bad for her
Oh yeah.
because you come into the season and that's your season. That's your season. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
They were so hyped about introducing her
Yeah.
as Laura Vandervoort's Supergirl.
Yeah.
Then the entire season is them finding ways to like get rid of her or take her powers away or erase her mind or
Yeah.
replace her with Brainiac. I'm like, guys, did you think this through? Why did you even bring her onto the show if you're going to? And I really like Laura Vandervoort as Supergirl.
I do too.
She's great and has some little bit of edge to her because she's different than Clark. She grew up on
Yes.
Krypton, has a different worldview, and I like them interacting, like him mentoring her. Like that's great because I mean we do see Superman and Supergirl interact in the Supergirl show.
Yes.
But it's not that like mentor-mentee relationship. Supergirl's so old and established at this point, and so much time has passed. Like the kind of stuff they were used to, ironically, the kind of stuff we're used to seeing in the comics between those two characters, we see in season 7 of Smallville more than anywhere else in live action. We'll see what the DCU brings us, but right now that's where we are.
Yeah, it's true. I love their relationship, and I wish she could have became a regular. I really do. I really do. But that's okay. I'll ask the question now. Are there characters in Smallville? 'Cause I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I really want to get this out. Are there characters in Smallville that you think overstayed their welcome? I'm looking at you, Lana Lang.
Yeah, I mean most of them. Well,
except for Pete.
Pete, no, Pete. We needed 4 years of Pete. Come on.
Yes,
like
we did.
Like I understand that they really couldn't figure out what to do with him, and Sam Jones III, not the strongest actor of the ensemble there.
It's true,
but it's a high school show. Can we keep the guy for all 4 years of high school?
Yeah.
And even, he's been on Talkville briefly and said things and other conventions. And like, you can tell, like, it still bothers him that he was like basically fired, go, it's like, like, and that's as I understand, that was kind of his hesitancy to even come down to Talkville and even talk. Cause he's like, I don't know, man, this is so, we've all been there. We're like, there's parts of your life where like, I don't know, man, I'd rather not talk about that.
Exactly.
So yeah, to answer your question, the opposite. Yeah. Pete for 4 years at least. Lana definitely should have left. Maybe she should have left after season 3 when she moves to Paris. But see, that's the thing. Like, I don't want to like fire actors and stuff, but like, you gotta, if you're telling a story here, like you're doing the same things. Like especially after Reckoning, right? My hot take is like they should have switched those deaths. Jonathan died first, and then kill Lana, because Smallville is very Spider-Man anyway.
Yes.
So then Lana can be like Gwen Stacy, for example. Yes. And then I know the Superman, Iron and tragedy, people really don't want that, but like this is the show, is angst, right? This is Smallville. Because if you look at what they did with Lana after that, after the midway point of season 5, what did she do? She gets with Lex Luthor. He fakes a pregnancy. She gets superpowers and takes revenge on people. Like, it's like, what are we doing with this character? Yes. So maybe better off in this particular version, to do that. So definitely would have. That's a logical out point for me for her. Other characters, Chloe even. Like Chloe, and there more and more has come out about like their thoughts on the Chloe character, which I mean, I was all about the Chloe becoming Lois Lane theory back in the day, right? And apparently that was like a thing, like it was a real thing, and might have caused some real problems. And I'm like, man, like
no kidding.
Oof. Like I feel conflicted and bad about all that stuff, and obviously, but the point stands that like you had this character who was like a proto Lois Lane, and then you bring in Lois Lane. And they're both there together for so long. I'm like, guys, you gotta pick a lane here. Like you
gotta pick a lane.
Yeah.
You gotta pick
that was unintentional. No fun intended. But it's like, okay, you either gotta like make Lois and get rid of Chloe in some way.
Yes.
Have her move, kill her off, do something with her. And they were exploring that, but they always like, oh, maybe she's gonna go crazy. Nah. maybe they're going to give her meteor powers. Nah. Like, they always brought her back to what she was doing. And then eventually they're like, season 8, like, okay, forget it. Like, Lois is Lois now, and you just do something else. And then she became Oracle, basically. You know, so I don't know what that looks like for Chloe. And I'm glad there was not just Tom Welling the whole year, the whole series.
Yeah.
Of course, it's Allison Mack, so that's its own conversation now. But at the time, it was like, it was nice to have one character there with him the whole time.
Yeah.
But then, like, that's kind of the journey of Clark, and this is just journey growing up. People come and go from your lives. Like, it is not just Luke. It's not just like, oh yeah, we're sick of these characters, get rid of them. Bring in other characters, rotate people in and out. So Tess, I like a lot. She's a fresh character they bring in here and shakes up the dynamic, right? Bring in characters that from the comics that Clark knew in college or something. Like, mix it up.
Yes.
And that's what we're looking for. We're not just like, oh man, these characters, like, it's just they ran out of story for them. And I think that's very obvious if you look at the show.
Exactly. That's exactly. I never want, like, it's not like being mean and be like, yeah, like you're saying, like, fire them. It's like, we've seen everything now. There's how many times I remember just being so frustrated with season 8 when Lana comes back and Clark gets with her again. I'm like, he just was hitting on Lois an episode earlier, and now you're thwarting it again.
Yeah.
For her to then leave again. And, like, sure, it's great that they finally made it that she cannot physically come back, but just felt like an overcorrection.
Oh, yeah.
Like holy geez, you are definitely making sure she is never coming back on this show. But it's just like, balance it out, guys. Balance it out a little bit. I always thought that it would have been nice post season 4 if we actually had Clark actually in university, like studying journalism. I don't know why they never did that. What are your thoughts on that idea? Should they have done that?
Oh, they should have. That's the thing, right? Does he go travel the world? You can't show that; it's too expensive.
Exactly.
I don't think they thought they would never have to show any of that.
Yeah,
that's why it's like, and it's a good setup in season 3, the Perry White episode. Perry,
yes,
he's like, hey, if you ever make it to Metropolis, look me up. And then you understand, oh, he's going to get there and get that job because he, had a history with Perry White and all that stuff.
Yes.
And that's all you need to know. But then if you're gonna see seasons 5, 6, 7, 8, you need to see something where he's just, I call it the college dropout years on my podcast, seasons 5 to 7. It's like this dude dropped out of college, like all these other characters apparently, and it's doing. But
went on to have stellar careers and own businesses. It's amazing what you can do when you drop out of college.
Like, they say that, like, Chloe was at night school or something. I'm like,
they did, yeah.
Okay, if you say so. But no, absolutely, like, some sort of progression. Because look, I mean, I'm not getting on some soapbox here, but these characters are role models.
No, it's true. Totally.
I mean, like, it's like to see him just spinning his wheels. Yes. It's not, you want to see him be proactive. You want to see him pursuing education.
Yes.
Because Clark Kent, like, they always make Superman kind of dumb and Batman like really smart. and I think there's a way to do that. It's naivety. He should be naive, and he should leap before he looks sometime because he just wants to. He's a man of action. Comics, right? That should be where his shortcomings are. Not that he's literally just dumb.
Yes.
Yeah, and that plays into that where he just drops out of college and doesn't pursue an education. So.
Yeah, it was weird. It was a weird choice to have them go to college for one season or a bit of a season.
Yeah.
And have his only class be history
with Brainiac.
That was a history class. Like, you could have done, like, imagine Brainiac doing a class on, like, the manipulation of, like, media and news. Like, that would have been fucking awesome.
We weren't ready.
We're
not ready. I don't think.
It's true. But, like, that would have been cool. That would have been scary. That would have been that you could have done something with that. That was an interesting choice to kind of dumb him down a little bit. Yeah. Okay, so okay, we've talked about all this sort of stuff. So the Chloe to Lois thing, it's probably a good thing that didn't happen. I'm glad that never happened. Regardless of what happened with Allison Mack, I'm still glad it never happened. I never liked that idea of Chloe being Lois, because how do you explain it? other than like a bunk on the head, and she just has no memory.
Well, I mean, there's not. I'm going to have to defend a thing, and I've kind of distanced myself from now. But like, if there was, first of all, if there was no Lois to ever show up on the show, then that's what you do. Once there is a Lois, I think that's over.
Yeah.
I think that's like case closed. Now, the show would still screw with you because like season 6, Lois is literally killed and Chloe resurrected her. Like,
that's true.
What are you doing, show? But then if you go back to like, remember, like watching it in order, season 1, 2, and 3, there is no Lois at all. There's a proto Lois Lane character here. There's an episode where she uses her name as a pseudonym. So obviously the logical thing would have been, oh, the Luthers are after her. She goes into witness protection. She comes back under the pseudonym. She dyes her hair black. And now Clark sees her 5 years later. Right. That's the way to do it. Like, there's a logical way to do it. And then you say like, well, her backstory is a little different. I'm like, and this Lois's backstory isn't different. Like
yeah, no kidding.
So that's when I say like, oh, that would have been cool. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Now obviously the show went in all these different directions, and it definitely has worked out for the best.
Yes.
For various reasons. Yes. But I think there was something to it, and the creators are even kind of they've talked about it now on top of it, like they had considered it. So, and you can see, I think you can see it there. But my deal was like, why continue to tease it out? Like once Lois showed up, like they're having these, like in season 5, like Clark and Chloe have like this epic kiss in the Daily Planet before he goes off to save the world. I'm like, what are you doing that for? Like, don't do that.
Because instantly retcon it in the next episode.
Yeah, and then you have Lois doing silly things. Like for like 3 years, I'm like, you're not helping like that, because I was on the message boards back in the days, the Krypton site message boards and all those discussions and whatnot, and you could kind of see what both sides are really saying there about that stuff. Now, but that's the show's fault.
Yeah, it is,
because Lois should have shown up and been Lois Lane, and then discussion over.
Yes,
but instead they're like, hey, Chloe, why don't you keep being Lois Lane for you know what I mean by that? Like, filling that role on the show for like 4 more years. While Lois like works at like at a coffee shop and is a campaign manager.
Right.
So that's why that theory continued as long as it did. Now, I'll say this: Erica Durance is fantastic, and had she shown up in season 8 and that was it, then she would be my favorite Lois. But it's because all this nonsense they did for years. I was like it she's still like a top 2 or 3 Lois to me.
Yes,
because Terry Hatcher and Bitsy Tulloch are up there. I'm not sure exactly what the rankings are anywhere, but that's what I'm saying. Like 8, 9, 10, perfection. But it's like, don't forget she was here 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, it's true. It is slightly frustrating that I think because when I think about the years that she's the best Lois are the years of Smallville that I like the least. Which is frustrating because she is really great in those years. And I remember watching those earlier seasons when she's there. I remember being a little apprehensive with season 4, being like, should we bring Lois in? Should we be doing this? I don't know. But the other thing that was interesting is I initially didn't catch that Chloe used Lois as a pseudonym. Because the day that episode aired, again, this is like, we're talking way back in the day. There's, you're recording things on your VHS and it's a bit tricky sometimes. I missed the opening of the episode.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I missed the time when she wrote down Lois's name. And I didn't see that until I bought the box set, the DVD box set, and then rewatched the season. That was the first time I even knew, because I didn't do the messaging boards and stuff like that. That was the first time that I knew that she did. I was like, oh my God, they name dropped Lois. And then that's season 3, I think. Yeah.
This is what all these people have been talking about.
Yeah. Right. So I was like, that was nuts. So then I was apprehensive about it when they brought her in. She won me over, but as you say, it's sort of like the dueling between her and Chloe was like, you had Chloe, Lana, and Lois, and all of them in some way have a thing for Clark, and it's just sort of, it gets tiring.
Well, making them cousins? Did you like that? I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, it was kind of trying to suggest that like the reporting and the tenacity of the DNA. It's like she's an army brat. She doesn't need to be related to Chloe.
And here's the thing, right? I mean, we're spending a lot of time talking about this, but it's fine, right?
Yeah.
When they bring her in, it's season 4, and the thinking is, oh, it's going to go 5 years. I'm like, okay. Also, the thinking is you get her for a couple of episodes. I'm like, sure, let's drop in a Lois Lane for a couple episodes, right? And those first 2 episodes that she's in, Crusade and Gone, like she's really good in them. She's very
great.
Lois.
Yep.
The longer she sticks around is a problem because it's like, oh, by the way, you failed high school. I'm like, what?
I didn't buy that. I never, as a high school kid, I was like, what?
Right. Again, education is important. And this show, I base my life off this show. So I hold it to a high standard. So like, I'm like, what are we doing here? Because this feeds these debates. Because you close your eyes, you think, what was Lois Lane like when she was in high school? You think who Chloe is.
Yeah.
Very, my dream is to work at the Daily Planet. I've been the editor of the high school newspaper and all that stuff. Like, yeah, that's so. But then you get over here, like Lois failed from high school and all this, and then she's coming back for silly things. And but again, think of the first 2 episodes. She shows up, on point, and then everything else is like, oh yeah, we can keep her around, but what do we have her do? Oh, I don't know. But
yeah,
and then it's like, oh no, how many more years do we have? 6.
Yes, right.
So that all feeds into itself. That you zoom out and you kind of see kind of where we ended up where we were but the thing is you got to keep Erica Durance around, because you don't want to say, hey, okay, thanks, and then it comes time for Lois and Clark to meet again for real, and she's off to another. She definitely would have picked something else up. She's a very talented actress, and she would have been gone, and you got to hold on to her. Always hold on to Lois.
Always hold on to Lois.
So then by the time you got to season 8, she was there and ready, because other shows like Arrow, for example, like The Huntress was a great breakout character of that first season. And then Jessica DeGao, I believe was the actress's name. And they always wanted to bring her back, but she was busy. She got jobs. She was, you didn't lock her down for a series regular. She's gone. So it's like, that's what you got to do. So anyway.
And I assume as well, one of the reasons that I'm assuming they kept around is looking at like Tom and Erica together on screen. There was way more chemistry with them two than Chloe and Lana for me.
Yeah, I would say they had a chemistry. It was more brother sister at first, but then it definitely became romantic as the show went on. I would say like chemistry with Lana, chemistry with Chloe, chemistry with Lois. I don't know if you would agree with that ranking, but
yes, yeah. No, I could never understand Clark's obsession with Lana. I just couldn't buy it. I'm like, she's fine, she's nice, she's pretty, but she's also hella annoying. Like, move on, man. Like, just move on.
Yeah, first crush, first love kind of thing going on. That's just that he could never shake it, right?
Yeah,
that's all there was to it.
He couldn't. It was that was okay. So at the moment, for Talkville are talking about season 4, right?
Yeah.
And I do you remember? Because they haven't mentioned this yet, and I don't think they know. Do you remember at the time, it was either right before season 4 or while season 4 was happening, there was that big, like, sort of like, I don't know, get involved with the show sort of thing where you could get like text messages that were from Lex Luthor. Or like they were like emails of Lex Luthor's that were like hacked and like sent to you that all had to do with the Stones and his sort of investigation into the Stones. Do you remember that?
You're unlocking some memories. I do remember because it would be like during the commercial breaks of the show, it'd be like, hey, Lex Luthor is joined. Is that sort of thing?
Yeah. Then you'd get physical text on your phone.
Wow.
You had to like sign up for it.
I never signed up for it. No.
Yeah. So I did. It was nuts. It was okay. Here's what happened. It was fucking nuts. They clearly didn't know what they were doing. So you signed up for it, right? And this is back when like texts cost like, I don't know. I think maybe they still cost. Do text messages still cost?
Not in my cell phone plan, but no, that's the reason I didn't text until like 2008.
Exactly, because they cost. It was expensive.
Right.
So when they did this, you signed up, but they did it in a way that was almost meant to be like an instant messaging sort of thing, where everyone who signed up could like respond to the text. And my phone was instantly being flooded with random messages from people all over like the States. Like just hundreds of messages started flooding in. And like I was like frantically trying to like get to the bit where I could like cancel cancel like that version of the messages so I could just get the Lex messages, because it was just like, what the fuck is going on?
Were your parents upset about your cell phone bill at that point?
I luckily my bill was fine in general, so it was like it didn't hit me too hard, but I was just like, oh my god, like that was my thought. My thought was like, my parents they're gonna kill me. They're gonna kill me because if I can't get these texts under control, like this is nuts. But yes, that was I remember that, and I was so it's funny they haven't brought that up, and I feel like someone needs to remind them that this was going on, because they're sort of like not remembering, I think, the way that we were engaging with the show, and like the Stones were such a big thing, and we knew that it was all connected, and those stupid messages that people would send, or the emails you'd get from Lex along the way were just they're pointless, but like fun ways of engaging with the show, I thought.
You gotta love those pre-social media attempts at viral marketing,
right?
It's just amazing.
I know. Oh god, I know. So okay, I want to chat a little bit about the podcasting stuff, and then a little bit more about Smallville.
Sure.
So what you're like the first rewatch podcast for Smallville. There I don't think there are any others at the time when you
not to my knowledge. No, I did a pretty extensive look in when I was planning to do this, and I was like, well, there was Starkville House of L, which existed during the show. Which I never listened to, and still hadn't listened to, because I was like, I don't want to even unintentionally osmosisly like copy stuff and just do my own thing.
Yes.
So as I understand it, they were around season 5 to 10, and then that was it, And so at this point, I started always on the Smallville in 2016, so the show's been over for 5 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like looking around, I'm like, well, did great. This is my thing. No one else is talking about it. I'm gonna do it, and many have popped up since I started, and so some of them are still going. Most of them aren't. It's quite a commitment. It
is. Oh God. A podcast in general is a lot of commitment. So to keep it going beyond a year is impressive enough. So when you were like thinking about doing a podcast, was it always going to be Smallville, or were you thinking of other things at the time?
Well, I had dabbled in it before. Like I had some friends, and the thinking with podcasting has always been for me anyway, like, hey, like, that feeling of you're sitting around the lunch table in high school talking about stuff with your friends. Like that's the kind of vibe. That or you're sitting on the parking lot after you saw a movie talking about it. That's the kind of vibe I want to bring to it, right? So I had some friends who I'd known since high school, and one of my my best friend Lance Laster, he's my roommate on and off over the years, and we were roommates at the time. We're like, hey, let's start something. So we had started kind of like a little podcast. We're going to talk about nerd stuff, and had some friends. But it's also like when you're going to go do a podcast, you're like, well, if you're just talking about the same stuff everybody else is, like, where's the where's your where's your hook? I mean, why would they listen to you instead of anybody else? And so we had some fun. We had a lot of good times with that. And I have some of those, I call them like the time before time. I'll share them like on our Patreon. Like, here's something like we talked about in 2014, right? So it's a fun little time capsule, right? That's what it is. But then I was like, I really do want to do this podcasting thing. What can I, because I'm a multimedia guy. So I'm like, what can I podcast it? I'm like, well, Smallville, and so that's why I kind of want to do the niche subject, because once you like laser focus on one thing, then it's like, oh well, you're the guy that people come listen to, and over time I slowly became the guy that people come listen to about Smallville.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, it's great. I've always enjoyed your podcast. You dive into the show in a quite, I like you say, like the kind of hanging around the parking lot after a movie. I like that approach, because it feels like you're sitting there as you're listening, and you kind of feel like a part of the conversation. And I appreciate that with podcasts. I sort of get bored with a lot of the, I mean, there's a lot of celebrity podcasts now. There's a lot of celebrity rewatch podcasts, including Talkville. And, some of them I'm like, this is kind of boring. I won't name names, but there's a certain Smallville actor who was recently on some other celebrities podcast, and I listened to it because he was on it, but that was the only reason I listened. And it was like, this is just, it just feels a little like, I mean, I I'm a writer, so I spend a lot of time in like the book world, and I get really pissed off with celebrity novels. I feel like the thing probably still applies to like celebrity podcasts. It's like, stop coming in and like sucking up our air.
I have similar feelings. Like, and like, look, anybody can do a podcast, great. But
Yes.
to your point, it's like the podcast like space kind of existed for people like us, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't have the platforms and the access,
Yes.
you know, that celebrities have, right? And so, like, yeah, it's the way that it's been spun, like, hey, isn't it fun that so and so's doing a podcast? And I'm like, well, yeah, but also like that immediately like takes over everything, you know. And
Yep.
I love Conan O'Brien, right?
Yes.
But I watched late night, like definitive, like formative for me, you know, in college, like my sense of humor, my sensibilities. But it's like, hey, Conan O'Brien's doing a podcast. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I just like, I don't like, for example, like, not to dunk on that one. Like, I've never really even listened to it. I've seen clips online. I think that's what it is now, right? It's it's kind of replaced the late night culture, but that's why I use Conan as an example, right?
Yes. Yeah, it has. The only celebrity podcast I listen to, other than Talkville, because I guess that technically counts, is I listen to Bill Burr's Monday morning afternoon podcast. Like that's the only one. But I kind of give him like slack because he's been doing it since like forever. So it's like, you know, he's been doing it since like before he was like properly big and famous. So I'll cut him slack, and therefore that's fine. But
yeah, it's a space between, like, you know, had radio DJs and shock jocks, or whatever. Like, there's that, and there's commentators, and now it's like this big melting pot now of like actors starting podcasts, and some of them are insightful. You know, I mean, I'm not saying that like it's all a cash grab and it's all like, you know, how dare you come into our space here? But but no, I definitely felt that way. Where it's like, isn't it cool that all these celebrities have podcasts now? I'm like, well, I don't know.
Yes.
I can turn on anything and see all these people, but now they're here. They're here too.
Now they're here. Exactly. I remember like it was all popping up mainly during like the height of the pandemic. It was like there was an Office podcast, there was a Scrubs podcast, there's a Boy Meets World podcast. I'm just like, oh my God, you guys, like, are we? I love nostalgia. I love looking back on like things that I love and talking about them. But then there also comes a point where you're like, maybe this is too much nostalgia. Like, maybe let's just dial it back, which is nothing I like about your show as well, is like you also incorporate like stuff that's happening now. Like you'll do like special episodes where you're talking about, you know, Zack Snyder's shit or James Gunn's stuff, which is always fun and interesting because you're kind of like you kind of drip between the two with Always Hold On to Smallville, and I like that, but it's nice. Yeah, and I also sometimes prefer. Yeah, I sometimes prefer the kind of the commentators of the thing rather than the players of the thing commentating on the thing.
No, I hear you there, and because you can, that's the perspective that we have, so we can more relate to that. And you know, we've been talking about Talkville a lot. Like I was very fortunate to be on Talkville. You know, they reached out to me when they launched, and that was huge for me. And I quite an experience, and I think they occupy a certain space because, like, look. Tom Welling and Mike Rosenbaum, they were there. Yeah, they were the actors. Like, they have stories and access to things and people. And so if you're looking for that, that's where you go.
Yes.
If you're looking for people to sit around, like you said, like hanging out outside the movie theater after, talk about what was that about, right? That's where you come to Always On Smallville for, right? Because I'm going to sit down for like 2 hours, far longer than I ever should, talk about these episodes, frankly. And be like, so okay. So the Veritas window and or what happened to Lucas Luthor, or like, so Impulse, is he really Bart Allen from the future? These are the things you're going to dive into. Well, you know, in Superman 2, you know, it's similar to this. Like, that's what I exist for. And I think there's totally like there's space for both those things. Absolutely. And you know, it's I mean, who would have thought when we were watching Smallville when we were younger, like the two stars of the show are going to sit down and do their own podcast about it. Like, that's the guy. Yeah. Like, if it was anybody else, but the fact that it's Tom and Michael, and the whole Talkville thing is really like super enlightening about Tom. Like, you think, but before you're like, what does he really think about any of this? Like, but no, he's super like he's not a super nerd. He doesn't really care about all this like Superman mythology stuff. And that's fine. But the important thing is he respected the work. He took it very seriously, and he appreciates everything that went into it. And he's out there really engaged in the material and really just wanting to share about it. And so the energy is fantastic. And that's if there's nothing else you watch or listen to Talk before you listen to it for Tom Welling.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the stuff that I take away the most. It's not about, I don't care about like how much comic book information they have, because I'm never of the opinion that like the actor needs to know everything. They need to they need to have an idea. It's good if they have an idea who the character is, and it's good that they that they can understand the material that's in front of them and act that material, and the director can guide them. I think it's probably more the director's job to understand things in some ways than it is necessarily the actor. When it comes to like mythology sort of building with this stuff. But I what I love about Talkville is, and it's what's different to your show, is that I love that we're hearing the actor's perspective of how they engage as actors with the material. You're not hearing it's not nerd culture stuff. It's like here's like insight into the art of acting. And that to me is the stuff that I find the most interesting. And when they are dissecting scenes, they're not like, did you catch that Easter egg and that Easter egg? That's what we do. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? But they're like, oh, I made this acting choice because of this. And like that's the stuff that I'm like, that's cool. That's what I like to hear on those sorts of things. So I agree. There's space for both. But maybe cut it back celebrities. Maybe
yeah, like and I'm not gonna use any specific because I really don't have a strong take on which ones or not, but like do sitcoms need rewatch podcasts, right? Because Smallville, like, look, and I know it's a teen drama with superpowers, right? But it ran for 10 years and it's an important piece of Superman mythology, and the character's been around 85 years. So like, I think it's worthy of discussion and study. Maybe that's pretentious of me to say, but I feel like it is.
No, I agree with you. I mean, you're talking to a guy who did a PhD in crime fiction. Like, who cares, right? Like, who cares? But I did, so there's definitely things that are worth discussion, because they've added something to culture. They've added something to pop culture. Now, if you were to like do a podcast on that Birds of Prey, like, what are you doing? Like, that is not worth holding on to.
I did do a podcast on my Patreon about that, just for the record. So
wait, you have a whole podcast dedicated to it?
Yeah, we covered every episode. It was great. Always on the Birds of Prey.
Jesus,
played yourself, Luke. No, but
fair enough. Fair enough. It's under your brand, so that actually makes sense. But you didn't set out to do a Birds of Prey podcast. You know what I mean? You set out to do, because between the two, what was the more culturally impactful?
Right. I mean, Birds of Prey. Now I'm liking it. Not yet. Make you feel bad now. I can't find it. My God. No, but like Birds of Prey, like it was a logical extension because it came out during Smallville. It was during the WB. Again, my friend Matt Trux, who's a big Lois and Clark fan, a big Birds of Prey fan. So he loves Birds of Prey. Co-host for me. We went through all the episodes. It's to me, it's a fascinating. To me, it's fast because it's part of a bigger mythology. Like talking about the place of this in the Batman mythos. Like, how does this even come to be? It's like some weird. Its heart was in the right place, I think. But it's this weird sequel sort of to the Burt Schumacher movies, but it's not part of those.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's one of these classic, it's after the hero's gone or before the hero existed kind of thing. And this laundry list, not laundry list, but this ever-growing list of shows of like, when Batman is gone, it's like, okay, can we get a Batman show? It's like Gotham's before, Birds of Prey's after, Batwoman's after, Gotham Knights was after. I'm like, can we just have a Batman show, please?
Yes. Titans.
Down. That's another. Yeah, it's another option there. But then having that's shows like that's when nostalgia comes in, because I'm like, oh man, they used the bat suit from the movies or something like that, right?
Yes.
Anyway, I understand what you're saying, but.
It works. What I guess the point is, it works for you within the context of like as an addition to your show, but to your point of like, is Smallville worth discuss? Smallville, I would say yes, that is worth the discussion because of its cultural impact. Folding in Birds of Prey and things like that, or like the Aquaman pilot that failed.
Yeah, talked about that too. Yeah, I mean, it's all tangentially created or connected, I should say.
Yes, so that to me works. But like I said, if you were to like, if someone was to pay, like, I'm going to set out to do a podcast on like Birds of Prey specifically, just out of with no connection to anything. I'm like, that probably doesn't have the cultural impact.
Have you watched Birds of Prey, Luke?
Yeah, I tried when it was on,
fair enough.
and I some of it I kind of liked, but then I was just like, I couldn't get past the no Batman, Barbara in a wheelchair. Like, I don't know. It was
well, no, I mean you weren't the only one, because clearly you got canceled over half a season, so you're not alone there. But I'm just fascinated that, like, I know we're going this Birds of Prey tangent, but it's fine, right? We got time. It's to me that's also fascinating to be like, okay, so Smallville worked and ran for 10 years.
Yes.
This show, it's like Superman show before Superman, huge success. Batman show after Batman, like, so literally the other end of the spectrum.
Yes.
Sputtered out after half season. But why? Like, it's like I look at a show like Birds of Prey, and then I look at other stuff on the WB. I'm like, I don't know, like that. I don't know. Like,
well, I mean, I think when I look back on Birds of Prey, I think it's the Bourne Legacy problem. You are watching, you're in Gotham, you want Batman.
Yeah.
Like, that's why no one likes Batwoman. Like who watches Batwoman? Who watched it? Is it still going?
No, it ended after 3 seasons with the whole Arrowverse. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, you know, and that show was already plagued with issues with having one Batwoman and then another Batwoman. And it's just like, what's, you know, you can't, you know, you're changing your titular character between one season to the next. Like, that's not good. That's not good. And like, you know, the Bourne Legacy for me was like, is the thing I always go back to. It's like, I don't want to see a Jason Bourne movie without Jason Bourne. At least I thought that until I saw Jason Bourne. And I was like,
there it is.
Maybe I don't need Jason Bourne in my life anymore. But like, I think that was one of the problems. And I think that was also why I didn't connect with Gotham. It's like, this little kid doesn't strike me as Batman, future Bruce, you know, future Batman. This kid just seems a little they took, again, I think they were taking too much from Smallville. It's like, here, Bruce is like 5 years old, but he's like meeting all of his villains now. And I'm like,
they aged him up. I'm like, what is he? He's like 13 when his parents die now. He's supposed to be a little kid. No, I hear, but you know, bringing it all back to Smallville, I think that is why Smallville works, because if there is a character you can do a story of before he is the character,
definitely
it's Clark Kent, because he's born with these powers, and then not to mention he is the main character, and Lex Luthor is there, and all the supporting people. And you got to change your mindset about Smallville. Like, at some point, it's not a prequel anymore. Exactly. It is just a new interpretation of the Superman story. A lot of stuff's happening when he's a lot younger. He's running around with the nest on his chest, you know, at some point, and they eventually get there, right? And so you can't be like, how is he fighting Zod and he's 22 years old? You gotta let that go, and then you can enjoy it.
Yes. See, that stuff never bothered me, and I think that's because I was more than fine with idea and concept of multiverse and multiple interpretations of super. You know, DC changes things all the time. Right. There's always a reinterpretation, fresh start. And there were moments where I was like, wait a minute, why are they doing this? But then I got to the point where I was like, no, wait, this actually makes sense, because you can do whatever you want in this reality. This is the Superman journey. Like, it doesn't have to like follow the Christopher Reeves journey. It doesn't have to follow Dean Cain. Like, this is the journey. This is their interpretation of it. And, you know, there, and once I got there, I was like, I was absolutely fine with it, because I thought the way they folded stuff in from the overall mythos, I thought generally worked really well. There's probably little bits here and there that I'm like, maybe not, but I think on a whole, they did well.
Well, you got to look at Superman. He's a character like Sherlock Holmes now, right?
Yes.
Where it's like we all have this pop culture understanding. And then now you, Elementary, go do your thing, and you, Sherlock, go do your thing, and you, Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law, go do your thing, and it's fine. They all have an audience, they all have their own successes in their own ways, and there's fine, because there's not like, it's different than like a Star Wars where there's like, well, there's only one, and if you mess it up, anyway, that's why it's great to have all these different versions.
Yes,
because we don't have to play that game here.
Yes, exactly. And I think, and again, I think why I when I think about like these superhero universes, these on-screen universes, and I think why I get so bored with them after a while, is I like the idea of something just being finite. Like, you have 10 years of Smallville, boom, you're done. Then you can do another Superman thing and do its own thing.
Only 10 years, Luke.
It's true. It's true.
You're done after a quick 10 seasons.
After a quick decade.
If you want finite, Luke, you need to go rewatch Birds of Prey. 13 episodes, you're done. Right? So
it's true, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. So you can do things like that, or then you can do something like Krypton, which I still not finished.
I really love Krypton. I recommend it. So
I liked the first season, and I liked bits of season 2, but I started to get a little bored. So okay. I still need to finish it, and I will finish it.
They're very different, so I understand. Yeah, you go from like it's
yeah.
I don't. Yeah, it's very different. The first, yeah, but anyway.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts. But I like Brainiac. Like he was cool.
Fantastic.
That was probably my favorite on-screen Brainiac next to James Marsden.
Marsters.
Marsters. Sorry.
James Marsden is Cyclops.
Shit, he is. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. He's light years better than James Marsters, and I love Smallville.
Yeah.
Hey, Brainiac 5's from the future. He's gonna have a green T-shirt because it's Smallville. You know what I'm saying?
I hate that episode, Homecoming.
You do?
I do.
That is like one of the best episodes of the show, Luke. What is your issue? Do we have time to unpack it here?
We have time to unpack it. I got all the time in the world.
All right,
fucking James Bond over here.
Let's discuss. So many hot takes. So
I do have some bold hot takes.
So if you like Homecoming, everyone, you're gonna love Birds of Prey because Luke hates them both. Let's just
exactly. Hate's a strong word.
Let's explore this. This is fascinating to me. Let's explore.
So there were things that I really liked about it, and there was a lot that I didn't like. I thought that it made no sense to bring Bug Boy back because he's a murderer. He murdered his mom, and he tried to murder Lana, and he just comes back and he's like, Clark helped me when I was a kid. I was like, no, he threw I don't know, some sort of big metal thing on you, and you burst into a billion bugs. Like he didn't.
That was very unclear. Yeah, if there was ever, there were a lot of Freaks of the Weeks where it was a vague ending. Yes. That one not so much. I'm pretty sure that guy just scattered into bugs because
he did.
That was weird anyway, but that's your network TV way of showing you that guy was smushed, right?
Yes, exactly. So you're thinking he's dead. There was, I remember watching that episode and thinking, oh well, maybe he'll come back because maybe he can like reform
from the bugs. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought I could buy it, with this type of show. I was like, it's fine.
But not 9 years later in your 200th episode.
Yeah. So he comes back to his homecoming. It's like the last time people saw you, man, you were like, you murdered your mom, you kidnapped Lois, you nearly killed Whitney. Like you're back and you're acting like Clark saved you. How did Clark save you? He technically murdered you.
The message they were trying to convey with him was the right one. Like, hey, we got a lot of us, we got lost and we got caught up on our own web because he's a bug.
Yeah.
But he set us straight, right? I'm like, okay. Yes. I like that because Superman should come into your life and set it straight. But you're absolutely right. The particulars are totally wrong because so many of those people, they go to Belle Reve and they kill each other off. And
yes. That's
I understand. I understand.
Yeah, that for me was one of the big things. Was like, I don't like that at all. Some of the bits with him and Brainiac and them doing some stuff were fun. I didn't buy Clark being like crowned homecoming king or whatever with Lois. Like, I was like, come on. Lois was in high school for 2 minutes. Clark wasn't popular until they made him popular in series 4, which I don't really like the football storyline in series 4.
We are in alignment there. Yes.
We didn't need it. It was I mean, they've been talking about it on Talkville and Michael Rosenbaum's been like, I'm done with this.
Like, did we do this already? I'm like, yeah, actually, I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, we have, and we don't need it again. I was very annoyed that they did that with series 4.
Well, then he goes back to high school, and they're like, hey, some of these random people we've never met before, of course.
Yes.
Like, hey, what happened to the bumbling nerd? I was like, that guy did not exist. You're thinking of Superman comic books, not the show.
Yes. And I think that's also part of my annoyance with the new showrunners. I feel like if Miles and Alfred had stayed, there would have been more consistency with some of that stuff.
Yeah, because they're thinking like, what was the past? I don't know. What's it like in the comics? I agree with you. I understand what you're saying there.
Yeah. So on the concept of the homecoming episode, I liked, but it was like this weird execution of like, Brainiac, he's here. He's kind of a threat, but he's not a threat. Bug Boy's here. Why is he here? People should really be freaked out by this, but they're not. Like, why would he just, the why, the Lois stuff, they kind of made Lois really stupid in that episode. Like I went, it's like, this is the longest place I ever went to high school. It's like, just shut up. Just don't, just don't.
They do bring back things from season 4 that we've already said on here we don't like.
Yes. And like,
but it's like a Christmas Carol journey through the past, present, and future, Luke, you see.
True. And there's little bits that I like, but I think the moments that I like are so big and glaring that I'm like,
okay,
it takes it away from me. So I'm like, it's an episode that I remember watching initially and liking, and then when I rewatch it, I was like, wait a minute. And then any subsequent rewatch is like, it gets lower and lower for me.
Interesting. I find this fascinating. I really do enjoy talking to people about selecting things we diametrically on opposite opinions of. I listen to a podcast. Shout out to the Film Stage Show. It's called Podcasts by guys that watch movies and they talk about it. Sometimes there are movies that I love, and I go listen to their podcast and they hate it, and I'm like, wow, I agree with everything they said.
Yeah,
but I still love it. So, like intellectually, I'm like, okay, they make a great argument for why this is actually a terrible movie, but yeah, I still love it though. So yes, all your points stand. You're correct. You're not. I can't debate you on the facts, but I don't know. I mean, it's it felt. I'll tell you this, right? It felt like a more appropriate kind of ending, perhaps, to this show than maybe even the series finale, Luke. Ooh. Oh.
That's an interesting point. I think you could have done something with that. Actually, I think
I've thought that as well over the years. Yeah.
Yeah, I've not thought about that until you mentioned it, but now you've like that. Yeah, the finale probably should have been Smallville centered, not Metropolis apocalypse bullshit.
A third meteor showers.
Oh, jeez.
What do you think against season 4?
Meteor shower number 2. Thoughts?
Garbage.
Yeah.
No, Commencement. A very exciting episode. Lots of stakes, right? You see lots of good saves. I mean, if you don't count 2-parters, like it's a 90-minute episode, so it's like a little expanded. Like that was special there, so it felt like an event. It really did, especially watching it at the time as we did.
Yeah.
But that's the dumbest thing ever. Like just because some blood got on some stone, like Brainiac ship comes in an asteroid field, and that doesn't make any sense.
No, I was a little bit underwhelmed with the idea of a second. I mean, I feel like they were like, okay, we have more money, we can do a cooler meteor shower now. Let's do it. And I think that's about as far as like they thought with it. Now we're just brainstorming here. This is fun. So like if they had never done, if they were going to do a second meteor shower ever, I mean, do it at the series finale, maybe as a bookend thing, and then who shows up in it? Supergirl. That would also make sense.
He's Superman now. You're Supergirl.
Yes,
that would have made more sense. And then you don't have to address the consequences of it because the show's over.
Exactly.
But that's such a straight, like the meteor shower is a brilliant way. Like when they invented that, I'm like, that is so brilliant because it covers up the fact a spaceship came.
Exactly.
Check. Also, there's meteor rock. Listen to me, that's a true Smallville fan. I'm calling kryptonite meteor rock over here.
Yep.
There's meteor rock everywhere, so it weakens Clark. Also, it can create villains. So like check, like across the board. Yes. Brilliant idea by Alan Miles. But you can't do it again.
Yeah. No. Especially doing it. This is the other thing. It was complicated. It's like you're doing another meteor shower on the eve of Clark probably going to college and not coming back to Smallville. So the Smallville was fun because there was all these high school freak of the weeks here and there, and so it's like, wait, so Smallville just must be overrun with meteor freaks now because there was no 2 meteor shower. Well, yeah, with no hero. It's like, wait, come on, we move on.
I would want to know. I would ask them and say like, so why do a second meteor shower? Like I
would love to know the answer.
That's on the top 10 questions. I was like, well, who came up with this? At what point did you say, guys, I got it?
Yeah,
another meteor shower.
Yeah, because you didn't need it. If you just needed to like have some ships come, because also it's like, I mean, I when I think about the lead up to the meteor shower, the graduation scene was also like kind of terrible for me. I didn't like the graduation scene where they're just like calling students' names out at random, no alphabetical order.
Were they not in alphabetical order?
They kind of were, and they kind of weren't.
I think they were. Because I distinctly remember, like, of course, Chloe Sullivan doesn't get to graduate because her name starts with an S, and they cut it off before
Yeah, that's right.
It's so sad. I agree. It is a small town, so I get that it's only like 75 people in a field.
It'd be
But
inside. It'd be in the auditorium. My hometown is basically Smallville. I don't know
mm,
about yours, but when I grew up, it was basically Smallville.
my hometown was basically Metropolis because I grew up in a small town outside the city of Houston, fourth largest city in the country. That's where I am, by the way.
Right. Yeah, Houston. I knew it was Texas. I
To
just
bring
couldn't
it
remember.
back to the very beginning.
Yes.
My graduation, high school graduation, was in the NBA team, the Houston Rockets. Their stadium they play in, the Toyota Center. Ours was there.
Oh, that's
So,
cool. That's
pretty
cool.
legit.
Yes.
And you think, Luke, you bring it up just from a production standpoint. You think it would be easier for them to shoot inside of a gym somewhere, instead of a field,
right? Like the thing is, you're literally in the field of the school where you shoot. Like the school is back there.
Can we go in there?
Just go inside.
And also, now we're getting way into the weeds, but it started to rain while they were filming that because you can see like raindrops on the clothes. I was like, is it supposed to be raining? Is this a mistake? Anyway, now we're getting way into it. But
I know those are for the super nerd fans right there. But yeah, I remember that being like, what are you doing? Every time you get those scenes where like you can see it raining in the background because the lights, and then like the actors aren't getting wet. You're like, oh, okay,
we gotta get this last shot in, y'all.
Yep, I loved it. Oh god, yeah, no, that was weird for me. I didn't. Yeah, the season 4 finale was hot and cold for me. Hot and cold.
That's fair.
I mean, I love the bit where he finally puts the fucking stones together and he's in the Arctic and he throws it. It's right there, right behind.
Oh, I
him.
see it.
There we go. I thought that was a really great scene, but it was just unfortunate that the episode was sort of. That was a bit blah.
Yeah, but it was more than some of its parts. Like the experience was good, but yeah, there were some definite question marks there.
Yes. Okay, so something I really want to talk about, as long as you still have time.
Oh yeah,
is I really want to dive a little bit into the finale of Smallville because we're clearly Smallville nerds. You know, we've been with the show for a while. The season 10 has some ups and downs. It has some pretty cool stuff, has some pretty iffy stuff. But I don't think anything is more iffy than that 2-part finale. First, what are your general thoughts on the finale?
Disappointing.
Yeah.
Michael Rosenbaum coming back salvaged a lot of it. Even though it was obviously he was there for one day, but filmed a lot of stuff, Yeah. Thank God he was there because I can't imagine that finale without him in it.
True.
And just a betrayal of the promise of the show because it was supposed to be Clark Kent becomes Superman. And I know that we see a CGI guy flying around, but I think we all understood and all expected, and maybe it's our own fault, but I feel like we were kind of, I think we deserved.
We did. The fans deserved it. I agree.
Clark Kent in a Superman costume. Now, Tom Welling, he said many things over the years, and I used to think, like, is he just saying stuff because he didn't want to wear a costume? But I don't know. He's been saying, and he's even said it recently, like in the most recent episode of Talkville, as of this recording, to date us here, Run. Yeah. He describes the end of Run like the end of the series. He's like, it's much like the series finale where you see this character and they go off on their own adventures and you can't go with them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Tom, I guess he really thinks this. Like, he truly believes that the part of the Smallville was like, it's just Clark. You can't go see him be Superman. And I don't know, man. Like, it's
like you can see him be Superman, but also know that you can't go on the adventures of Superman.
Yeah. Like,
there's a difference.
Just 2 hours, man. Yeah. All we need, like, this should have been a Superman TV movie.
Yes.
That should have been a series finale.
Yes, and they should not have wasted a whole 40 fucking minutes on a will they won't they get married to then flash forward 10 years to them getting married. And I can never work out the ending of this episode. It's like it's 10 years in the future, 10 years beyond the end of the show.
I believe it's 7 years in the future.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
2018, the far future. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, it's 2018.
When Lex is elected president in 2018.
Exactly.
Yes, of course.
Exactly. So it was like, okay, so you have Clark he's now bumbly Clark with the glasses, and you're like, you're sort of rushing. You feel like you're rushing this. It's like, why would he suddenly like he's fully adopted like nerdy Clarkiness now that he never had throughout the whole show. So I'm not sure that was required.
Well, they were playing with that at the end of season 10.
A little bit, yes.
Yeah.
Then you have because you have that one really good episode where Clark goes into the future and he meets his future self.
That's the really good episode of Homecoming, which you don't like.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, that scene. Okay, yeah, that scene I like. 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 Yes, I forgot where that one was.
But how did I become so uptight and nerdy?
Yeah, but but the thing is, he wasn't like bumbly nerdy. He was just sort of like
greasy hair and
yeah, he was uptight, but he wasn't nerdy. And I was like, okay, I'm fine with that. But once we see once we're in the finale and he's like, oh, sorry, oh, blah, blah, blah. It's like, don't imitate Christopher Reeve. You don't need to do that.
Well, that's a huge thing about the finale. Like they for some reason, they felt like, oh, well, we better make this match up with the Superman movies. Why? I don't understand.
Why, exactly.
Like,
why?
We better erase Lex's memory. Why?
Why?
Like you had a fantastic dynamic. You set up between Clark and Lex, and he knew his secret, but they had the history together, and that was going to inform their relationship, much like Professor X and Magneto, and that sort of way of arch nemesis. But also they used to be the best of friends. That's fascinating, and that's what I was always looking forward to as this story concluded. But then just to erase his memory and then to make Clark, oh, hello there, bye, kind of guy, like it was. No. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Now, if he had showed up in Metropolis in season 8 and was wearing glasses and maybe acting that way, then I guess but you can't act normal for 3 years, and then because people will always be talking about what the hell happened to Clark that time. He's so normal, and now he's like a weirdo.
Yes, exactly. It makes no sense. It's for comic book lore, not for like logic of the show and logic of that universe. And I agree. I hated the Lex losing the memory thing. That was just you could have even played it where like he didn't remember Clark having powers or remembering the fortress because of like he's a Frankenstein Lex, or is he? You know, you could still have averted some of that stuff, but erasing all of his memory in Smallville just seems, I'm assuming in the comic, because they did that season 11. I'm assuming they've retconned that and they've given him back his memories. Do you know if they did that?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Really? They stuck to it. That's nuts.
I mean, no, he definitely has no memory in the comics. Yeah.
That's nuts. I would have thought they would have retconned the shit out of that. Because I just thought that was dumb. But yeah, sorry, back to the ending there. Like, because then he bumps into Lois and he calls her Miss Lane and they're gonna get married, but they're getting married in secret. So it's like, because she's like, you don't need to call me Miss Lane, no one's around. And I'm like, so you're going to what?
Yeah. Listen, it's this slice of like the Superman status quo.
Yes.
That's why it's there.
Yeah.
A lot of it is surface level. Yeah. Where it's like, great scissors. Hey, good on Michael McKean for doing a little audio cameo there, but he's behind the door.
Yes.
That's Perry White. Hey, Aaron Ashmore got to be actually Jimmy Olsen. Okay,
finally.
Good. That I think that, you know, after the bait and switch with him, I felt good that I go for him as an actor at least.
Yes.
He got to be the real Jimmy Olsen.
Yes.
But it's like, and then to me, honestly, and I love the Christopher Reeve, and I love the John Williams theme from the Christopher Reeve movies, right?
Yes. And
I like how it was reorchestrated and included in like season 2 in a couple episodes, right?
Awesome. That was like, that's right? Up there. That's a great moment.
S tier, as the kids say. But now they're literally just put in the CD. I've said this before. They put in the CD and press play from Superman the movie. It's like, there's no like reorchestration, or they're just syncing stuff up and looping things. And he goes up to the roof and he rips open his shirt, and that's the end of the show. And that would have been cool if this was season 5 or even season 7, Luke.
Yes.
But for season 10, where we've seen shirt rips and we've seen CGI Superman and we've seen Clark fly, right? Yes. That doesn't cut it, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So the next question is, what would you're in charge? What would you do for the finale of Smallville if you were able to go back and fix it? Whether you're talking the whole series 10 or just the finale, what would you have done?
Ooh, I mean, Alan Miles have talked about this recently. Talked about, again, Craig Burton for Krypton site. Shout out. Talk to him about what their plans for the series finale would have been. It would have been Clark Kent.
Oh, wait, I didn't know about this. Where is this at?
Yeah, so Krypton site.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Look it up. Interview with Alan Miles talking about their version of the series finale of Smallville. So I recommend everybody go check out that.
Do it later tonight.
And their plan would have Clark Kent reporter interviewing President Lex Luthor. And that's like the framing device or whatever, and then you take it from there. But I'm like, yes, like, and I don't know who knows what at that point, right? I don't. You're right. I mean, they were very vague on the details, but like, yeah, it's been long enough. I'll give you guys a little taste of what we had in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the show was about them and their journeys, so it should have
Yes.
ended with them and their journeys. And
Yes.
I mean, you asked about the finale versus the whole season. I would have redone the whole season and just not done Darkseid. I just the dark I like
Yeah.
good on you for attempting something, but you did your reach exceeded your grasp, right? Is that the the term?
Yeah.
They couldn't quite do it, right?
No.
So
Terrible.
cut all that stuff out. But the problem, Luke, is what do you do about Lex Luthor? Because they didn't know Michael was going to come back to like the literal last minute.
Yeah.
And so how do you can't build the whole thing around him?
No.
But so then you're kind of stuck, right? So in a perfect world, they would have figured out some way to hash stuff out with Michael and have him been back as a presence throughout, not every episode.
Yeah.
But like he's in that first episode as like one of those clones, or maybe he is the clone, original guy, and he comes back then, and then he's popping in and out and doing things in the end, and I don't know what that looks like, but that's what you got to do. Now, if you do keep Darkseid, for whatever, if you decide to, you have to have them work together to defeat Darkseid. That would be the ultimate thing, because there's episodes where Clark and Lex have to work together, and especially in the younger years, and you're like, oh man, you want to bring some of that back.
Yes,
so that's what I would do too. And also the whole season, you gotta make Clark, like, you gotta have him have glasses all year. You gotta,
totally.
I'm not saying he's got to be like like that Christopher Reeve Clark Kent, but he's got to have glasses, and he's got to act a little different. He's got to have a difference of and they do a little bit, but not near enough. And so you tease that out the whole season. You throw in the Justice League people like you did. You follow up with them, and the whole the whole like government being against the superhero things. That's solid. Actually, that's a good.
Sure.
I would keep that in season 10. But yeah, you gotta changes need to be made.
Yeah.
Also, I know we're all sick of Lana, right? I would have brought her back for some sense of closure. Honestly, have her cured, and then have Clark not go off and fall in love with her. To kind of prove that, because the joke now is like, well, the only reason he's not with her is because she's poisoned to him. You need her to come back, have a scene with her and Lois and Clark, and kind of just clean that up.
Yes,
that's one other thing I would do. So now we're like rewriting the whole season 10, but those are my scattershed ideas. I definitely do like the whole President Lex angle, because they were always working towards that, and we had never seen that, right, in live action. And so that was part of this show's inevitable future. It was working towards.
Yes.
So play that into it somehow. And then lastly, and I'm going on and on.
No, go on.
Not that I don't think about this all the time, but you got to have. I would have had, seriously, just do a Superman Returns style plane rescue that reveals him to the world. He saves Lois. He does an interview. He does a big speech, and it's the whole thing. And like, you need smaller scale people. You just need to push a CGI planet into space.
Exactly.
Reveal himself to the world that way.
Yes.
And those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. With the revealing of the world to the world thing, like, absolutely, a plane falling, Lois is on it, you catch it. Fuck, it happens over Smallville. You know what I mean? You bring back Smallville. You have your beginning where it ends. Maybe
he lowers Air Force One into some cornfield or something.
Yeah, whatever. Or if you go with Miles and their idea, and you have this Lex being interviewed by Clark, like that could be taking place in the mansion. So that can be happening in Smallville. You know what I mean? Like, you can have that. Because I think that was the thing that was missing for me. It's like, it's always hold on to Smallville. None of the episode takes place in Smallville. It's like, okay. But also, that was the other thing. It's like, I was always ready for Clark. This is where the show got tricky. So I was ready for Clark to move the fuck out of the barn. And like, it's like, you can't constantly be in Smallville, and then, because how Metropolis, the distance between Smallville and Metropolis changes like every other episode. It's like, it's either 3 hours away or it's 45 minutes away. Like, which is it? Is it a helicopter ride, or is it, what is it? At least put a fucking train station in Smallville or something. But so I was always like ready for him to like kind of get out, but I do think going back to the roots for that final episode would have been better than what they did, for sure. For me, what do you think Okay, let's back to Talkville for a second. What do you think? Let's predict the rating that they will give the finale.
I think Tom will give it 2 roses. And I think Michael will give it 1.5.
Do you think so?
Because he's in it.
Because he's,
you know what I'm saying? I don't know. Like, yeah. I mean, objectively, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing, and I get it because, like we were talking about before, these are professionals who were there now. They've now become commentators, or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
And so, like, Michael will go so hard on these episodes, so hard on them. And he'll be like, oh, like a rose. I don't know, because he doesn't want to offend people that he knows or friends.
He doesn't want to shit on the show,
right? But let's he goes 3. He can go 3, 2, 1 bomb, a heater, 1, 2, 3 rose.
Yeah.
So the way he talks about this stuff, like he should be given 2 bombs, 1 bomb, almost all these episodes that he's not talking about, that he doesn't like.
It's true.
But then, like, you hear him gush about some episode, like, rose and a half, 2 roses. I'm like, what?
What? Yeah, it's true.
So it's really hard to tell what they would give it. Maybe, yeah. To be okay, I think Tom will give it 2 roses for sure, because I think he's proud of it and thinks like it was the ending that his character needed. He truly feels that way. Michael maybe would give it a heater. I don't know. Is he going to be that rough on it? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's where I'm like really curious to find out, because I'm like, man, I could. For me, it's probably a heater. It's not. I don't like the finale. Every time I watch it, it makes me sad. I'm like, it has moments like the scene in the fortress is a good scene. The final scene between him and Lex is an interesting back and forth. I like that. Like, that was fine.
Yeah.
But like other than that, like, I hate the wedding. I hate the reading of the vows through the fucking doors. Like,
multiple times. You hear their vows multiple times.
Yeah, it's like you were just padding this out. Like, you don't have 80 minutes worth of story. You have an episode worth that you ridiculous. Yeah, and yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of it that I thought is a waste of time. So I'm kind of like, I agree with you that Tom will probably give it 2 roses. But I'm thinking Mike will probably give it. I'm going to predict a heater. I'm not going to go with a bomb, but I'm going to go with a heater.
I don't think he give it a bomb either. But they rarely give the heaters. They rarely give the heaters up. But I think that's appropriate because it's like such a mixed bag.
Yes.
And there's so much that goes into that. So we'll see.
We'll see. Now, let's briefly chat the future of Superman.
Okay.
So we're through the DCEU, all that's done. We're now moving into the DCU. Earlier, just today, we found out that Superman and Lois was canceled because of the new Superman Legacy movie, written and directed by James Gunn. What? I think I've heard your thoughts before, but I don't think you're that ecstatic about the new Superman movie for various reasons. It maybe being overcrowded because it seems to have every character possible mashed into this movie. Now we're also finding out that it's the result of this movie is canceling a TV show that is pretty decent.
I really enjoy Superman Lois. I think it's fantastic. It's one of the best interpretations of Superman in recent years for sure. So I had always assumed that they were ending Superman Lois because it's like, well, CW is winding down and it's a very expensive show. And, I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, I was like, oh, that's too bad because I really do love this show, but it's fine. Like their schedules have been very inconsistent, probably hasn't helped with the ratings and all that stuff. So, but if you look at the word of mouth and the buzz and the general temperature of the fandom, extremely popular, right?
Yes.
And then this news comes literally today, right before we were going to record. This news comes out that the Brad Schwartz from the CW says that Warner Brothers made the decision to cancel it because of Superman Legacy, and it's like, what? Like, I don't understand that reasoning. I don't, but there's no reason to. I don't know. I mean, I believe it. Because this is how they behave. It's so strange. But once again, like, how many Batman are there? There's going to be Robert Pattinson. There's going to be, there's the Joker universe over here. There's there's the Brave and the Bold Batman.
Yep.
And so that's pretty infuriating. To know that like this really well regarded show that I really love and enjoy, one of, if not the reason it's being canceled is because of this movie that I'm not too crazy about. Like that's disappointing and frustrating, Luke.
Yeah, it is, because it reminded me of the drama that happened with Smallville, because I remember.
Yeah, remember they canceled Smallville? Oh wait, they didn't for Superman Returns. Anyway.
Yes, no, but what I mean was getting it's true. But I'm glad they didn't. But I remember there being controversy about whether Tom would or wouldn't wear the suit in the finale. And I know Tom has said his piece about how he said he was never going to do it. But I've also heard conflicting things where they were told they couldn't do it because there was a new movie coming out.
Yep.
That movie being Man of Steel, that didn't come out for another like 2 years after Smallville ended. And so you were like, because they didn't want that to confuse, oh, is this a continuation? You know, like whatever. Like, come on now. Who would have thought that was a continuation? Zack Snyder, for crying out loud. But yeah, so I feel like this is kind of that same sort of thing where they have this weird sort of apprehension to have more than one Superman, even though Tyler, what's his surname?
Tyler Hoechlin. Yeah,
Hoechlin. I mean, he's technically played Superman twice. He's not playing the same Superman.
This is a different Superman from correct, from the Arrowverse. Correct. Yeah.
You know, so it's like he was also coexisting along Henry Cavill.
Yeah.
No one cared. It was clear. So
there's a Flash TV show that was on when the Flash movie came out.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, what multiple Flashes, multiple Batman, multiple it baffled me. It baffles me. It's why I can't work out why the WB do this.
I thought we were past this.
I did too.
Right? Yeah. I think everybody understands it. And what were we talking about? We were talking about before. We're like, it's so great. There's all these different versions for everybody.
Yeah.
And this is what causes this tribalism in fandom when they're like, totally. Hey, you know the thing you love? We're not going to do it anymore because we have this other thing that we want to make. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Can I still have my thing? No. I'm like, what? I understand. Like, hey, we're not going to make a movie because we have this movie. But like, you know, this show that's well established and going on over here in its own corner of the universe, we got to cancel that because we got a movie coming out. What?
Yeah. That to me, I don't get. I'll never understand it, and it makes me not want to watch this movie.
What's your problem? What are your issues with the movie?
Well, I think one, I have like the casting just seems really bland. Just that alone. I remember when they I can't remember the guy who's playing Superman because I'm terrible with names.
David Cornsweet. Yeah,
that's the guy.
He looks great for the part.
I mean, he does look like Super, but he also looks like this weird love child between Henry Cavill and Tom Welling.
He does. He looks like you took the Henry Cavill clone out of the oven a little too early. That's
yes, yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay, is this different? Is this different enough? Whereas, you know, Henry Cavill looked different enough from Tom, and Tom looked different enough from Dean Cain, and Dean Cain looked different enough from Christopher Reeve.
You can look like Superman, but not look like each other.
Yes,
and that's the problem right here. That if you choose to see it that way, I see it as confusion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I could see people being confused. Like, wait, is this the same guy? Like, people who aren't super nerds are going to be like, is this the same guy from that other movie? Because they look the same.
Yeah.
Like they really do. So I'm like, that's definitely gonna.
I think Rachel Brosnahan's great casting though.
Maybe.
Okay. What are you looking for? Some like Gene Hackman, Kevin Spacey name or something? Like I'm just saying, like a big name or something. Like is that what you're talking like casting wise? Not even talking about them as actors. I'm just talking about like are you looking for some big?
I prefer unknowns for some of these roles for sure.
Okay.
I'm always more interested when an unknown gets a role. Like when they're talking about who's going to be the new James Bond. I'm like, don't make it anyone we know.
No Henry Cavill for James Bond.
No Henry Cavill. Okay. I don't need Henry Cavill James Bond. You know, you find someone who's a genuine talent. Like Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss when they cast Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock Holmes, genius. Not a very well known name, and he took the world by storm, and he just became modern day Sherlock. Like that to me worked. Do that with some of these characters. I don't think because it's Nicholas Hoult is Lex Luthor.
Yeah, I'm kind of
that doesn't really excite me. The chick from, am I allowed to say that? The girl, the lady, the woman, the young woman from the individual from Game of House of the Dragon, who's the new Supergirl. cool.
Yeah, people are excited about that.
I don't know her very well. She was great in that show, so I'm kind of interested in that idea. That's fine. There's something visually about the new Lois that I'm like, are you Lois though?
Okay.
Are you Lois? Because Rachel McAdams, as much as I like her, was not Lois.
Rachel McAdams.
Is that no? God, I did the wrong name. Right? God,
Amy Adams.
Amy Adams.
Rachel McAdams would have been a fantastic
Rachel
Lois
McAdams.
Lane.
Yes,
she was actually top of my wish list for years. But I
it's probably
100%
because you
agree about
mentioned
Amy
Robert
Adams.
Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes, and she plays Irene Adler. That's probably why
There
that's
you
in
go.
my head.
I love Amy Adams as an actress, but I don't think she was
Yeah,
the best fit for Lois. Yeah.
No.
Smallville's Amy Adams, by the way.
She was, yes. The she eats the fat of people and
Yes.
beasts. Yeah, so she I didn't really like her. I liked Erica Durance. She was great. I didn't really care for oh, what's her name from Dean Cain when
Terry Hatcher?
Terry Hatcher.
You didn't care for Terry Hatcher?
I think it's because I didn't like the show.
She's like the best one, man.
Maybe. I also don't.
You need to watch Lois and Clark season 1.
Okay.
Watch it, but it gets zany after 2, 3, and 4. I know some people's speed. Me personally, I really like season 1. I think John Shea's a fantastic Lex Luthor. I think Wayne Smith is a great Perry White. There's good stuff there. Just watch season 1.
Okay. I'll go back.
Shot.
I'll go back. Because I
also like rewatch Birds of Prey while you're at it. Please continue. So.
Birds of Prey. I feel like we've never had I feel like we've had iconic Superman. I feel like Christopher Reeve is iconic, right? I don't think we've yet to necessarily have iconic Lois, like definitive Lois Lane.
Because I feel like Terry Hatcher is that. I feel like later Erica Durance is that, and Betsy Tulloch getting there. You know?
Yeah. I mean, Erica is the closest for me. She's the closest, particularly as you're saying, particularly towards the end of the show. So I'm just like, and this is what I said on Twitter the other day. I was watching Seinfeld and Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I'm like, I was watching. I was like, oh my god, what a missed opportunity.
Yeah, she's been great.
She's poppy. She's zany. She's like beautiful. It's like that would have been like. She would have been a perfect Lois Lane. Like, holy shit, how did we miss that in the 90s? Like, goddamn, what a shame.
Oh, so yeah, I'm with you there.
Someone like that, but I think would be with that kind of energy is what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Because also there was the Lois in the Superman Returns was a total dud.
Oh, okay, Bosworth. No, not a good way too young, miscast.
Yeah. So I'm like, come on, I like Brandon Routh as Superman. Again, he looks different enough. He was close to Christopher Reeve, but it was still
man. He was supposed to be Christopher Reeve.
He was supposed to be. So I which was never made sense to me. Why would they do that?
Yeah, that's its own conversation. But
goddamn, that movie is a complicated hot mess.
Yeah, I like a lot less than some of its parts again because there's some fantastic stuff in there.
Yes, but yeah. God damn that movie sometimes though. Yeah, it was. Yeah, so I think I unknown, but like
so you're not lit by you're not getting lit on fire by these casting announcements. Is what
no. I mean, not at all. I need to see it in action before I can really get excited. But having seen again Nicholas Hoult, like he's great in other things ish. I don't know if he's going to be a good Lex Luthor. I just
there were a lot of other choices. That was like the Skarsgårds. He would have been interesting to me. The guy from Always Sunny from Philadelphia. I don't know if he was even in the talking in the listing, but like he has that comedic dark energy that Michael Rosenbaum, who to me is the best Lex Luthor. Like there's something about that comedic dark energy. Gene Hackman even there's something about that channels that character well, and I feel like and I forget the actor's name, but Dennis.
Yes. I can't remember his name either.
That would have been intriguing.
Yes,
to me, I'm like Nicholas Hoult. I mean, Beast. Now I've heard from friends like, hey, he's great in a lot of their stuff. I'm like, okay, we'll see. He damn well better have a shaved head though. That's that is a deal breaker for me, man.
Yes. I can see it not happening, but I can see it because who was the last Lex? Jesse Eisenberg.
At the end of the movie, became Lex of the guy. Miscast, huge miscast.
Yes, So it's interesting. I feel like every bit of information that comes out about the DCU just becomes less and less interesting to me.
Oh yeah, no. Here's the thing, right? And you've maybe heard me talk about it some, and like I want this to be good. I want it to be
Same.
because I love the Bat. Do you like the Batman?
It's I had a complicated year with the Batman because for one reason or another, I think I watched it about 4 times.
Okay, well,
And that's
oversaturation then.
Yeah, so by the fourth watch, I was like really, really done with it.
Okay.
But that first couple of watches, I think there's a lot of cool noir elements. It's one of the more interesting Batman movies that I think we've got. So there's a lot I like, but yeah.
Well, my point there is like I want this to be that for Superman. Like it's like we can all pretty much agree. Like some people, I'm like, man, is it maybe the best? I don't know. It might be like just the interpretation. The character is fantastic. It's a very uniting thing. I feel, and I was all about the Ben. I wanted to see the Ben Affleck Batman movie. Release the Affleck movie. Like I wanted to see that.
Yeah.
We got this instead. So it really had to win me over, and it did. Anyway.
Yeah.
I want this to be that for Superman. Right. I really truly do.
Yeah.
But it's just like, man, like I feel like I have to be like, well, guys, excuse me, but because I see so many people like, this is going to be the best movie of all time. I'm like, can we just wait? Can we chill? So I have to like feel like I got to balance this out with some like, So I don't want to be negative about it all the time, but I just want to be a little more level headed about it.
Yes,
and that's where I feel like I am right now with Superman. Like, we'll see when a poster comes out, when a trailer, we'll see. It can win us over, Luke. I hope it does. But I'm similarly like I'm cautiously optimistic. You might be cautiously pessimistic. I don't know.
Yeah, probably cautiously pessimistic. Yes,
that's where we are.
The last question then regarding Superman Legacy then is your take on: do you think it's in the right hands in terms of writer director?
I don't know. I like Guardians of the Galaxy movies.
Yeah, I like the first one.
Yeah,
kind of like the second one. I didn't like the third one.
I mean, Peacemaker was actually better than I expected. I enjoyed that.
I've not seen it.
I actually enjoyed it. But it's James Gunn. His whole thing really isn't my speed. You know, I'm not like, oh man, he's just So I don't know. But the thing,
I did enjoy the Suicide Squad. Is that terrible to say?
Fine. It was way better than the first one.
Than Suicide Squad.
It was fine. Like his track record does not show me give him the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah.
His track record is, keep in these weird corners, new fun things with weird characters that no one is going to be up in arms about, right? Because nobody cares about the Guardians of the Galaxy, but now they're great.
Yeah.
So it's like, Richard Donner directed Superman the movie. He did The Omen before that. So who am I to say like, well, I don't think James Gunn's a good fit for Superman. I don't know. I want it to be different than what we've seen him do before.
Yeah.
This is his chance to prove to me it's not just going to be, all right, what's the soundtrack going to be and who's the goofy character?
Yeah.
Like it needs to be different. And filmmakers do have different gears. They do. So I want to see a different gear from them for this movie.
Yeah.
But like when you tell me like, hey, James Gunn's directing Superman, what do you think? I'm like, meh. Like, I don't like, oh my God, I can't wait. Like a lot of people feel that way. I don't, but we'll see. Yeah. He can prove me wrong.
He can. And I think I'm with you on that is I would like to be proven wrong. I'm with you on that because I don't have any excitement, and I'm like, give me something to get excited about, and it probably won't happen until I see a trailer.
I'm excited for season 4 of Superman and Lois, the last one. Thanks.
Yeah,
Superman Legacy.
Right. Thanks. That's the legacy of Superman Legacy is ruining Superman and Lois, which I think that is a real shame. I think that is a real shame to see that show cut short because of a stupid movie.
More info might come. This is breaking news to us. So more info might come out later. And you guys are, well, didn't your guys see? No, we didn't see. We just saw the initial news. So don't
literally that's the tweet today.
That's all we know. So anyway,
like 10 minutes before we started recording, guys, this is literally all we know. Exactly. So when someone like a year from now will be like, yeah, but well, okay. Yeah. 10 minutes before we started recording. Well, yeah, it sucks, but yeah, well, maybe there is more to it. Maybe the WB is maybe they wanted to wrap up all their superhero shows in general, and maybe they want a clean slate. I mean,
that's what I thought until this news came out. So
yeah,
I would have been much happier just knowing and thinking that. But
yeah,
here we are.
Yeah, and I guess this news doesn't necessarily contradict a clean slate, as in like maybe they don't want to do any more superhero TV shows. Mm-hmm. For a while because they've been doing them for the last 23-4 years. Yeah. It's a long time to be doing this stuff, and when all of them are now going to be done on major motion pictures and stuff. Well, I can kind of it sucks, but it's like, yeah, I can kind of see it if that's really the reason. And they're being like, and so the show were like, we wanted to keep going, but the Overlord said no. I'm assuming it's just clean slate
Yeah.
because, but it's tight on the people who did it because, I remember when Superman Returns was coming out, people were like, but you already have Superman on TV. Like, would you have ever wanted a Smallville movie?
Oh, 100%. I mean, when I grew up, my favorite TV shows were Batman the Animated Series, Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yeah.
I'll throw the X-Files in there.
Yes.
They all got movies, so I assumed the logical thing to do at the end of Smallville was to make a Superman movie.
Yeah.
And now, had Smallville ended around season 5 or so, and you had more of the universe to explore, I think that would have been a slam dunk to do.
Yeah, definitely.
But obviously, by the time you get to 10 seasons, it's also you can't do it anymore. Like but yeah, ideally, Smallville lasts 4 or 5 years, then there's a movie. So I would have loved that, and to see the fully formed versions of these characters. Because I've seen Superman and Lex 100 times and other stuff, but I want to see these characters be those guys in the future, and that's what I wanted to see a movie for.
There's always these rumblings of possible revival of some kind.
The animated show they've been talking about, I was very hopeful for it for a time.
Yeah,
but I feel like its window of opportunity has passed. Especially, I mean, Rosenbaum and James Gunn are friends. I mean, if I were James Gunn, I'd be like, "Here, Michael, here's your show," but they're not doing that, so I don't know.
Yeah, I feel the same. I mean, I guess there's always one of those things where it's like, the DC animated stuff is all over the place. So like, still maybe. But I think I think it's probably just nonsense somewhere out there. But I think there was even like a talk of like a live action miniseries revival in like a Dexter New Blood kind of sense.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
And I might be conflating things, but I'll never believe it until they actually say it. But it's like, would you want them to actually come back in live action?
At this point, no. I think they're kind of past the point of that at this point, unless they did some like really Kingdom Come kind of thing, with Tom Welling. Maybe I don't know, but I just don't think they will.
No, I don't think so either.
But animation, they could do it 10 years from now, right? So that's the great thing about animation. So I don't think anything's ever going to come of Smallville ever again, but I didn't ever think we get a weekly podcast with Tom Welling and Mike Rosenbaum talking about the show every week.
It's
so
true.
Never say never.
It's true. So then the literally the last thing we'll touch on Smallville related then is the last glimpse we got of Smallville was in Crisis on Infinite Earths, the CW crossover with all their shows where they were jumping all over the place from Lutherverse to Batman, Tim Burton verse, all that kind of stuff. And they had a brief moment in Smallville. I think you're pro this scene.
I am. I think it's a very effective button to the show. I feel like had we seen this if it's a celebration of what the show was and not like necessarily where he should be, maybe. Because it felt like Smallville. He's on the farm, he's doing things right. It had the right vibe to it. And I'd seen him in Glass of the Daily Planet. I'm like, that's not the show I watched. I also like how like he got the famous comic book, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. The ending is, Clark Kent has given up his powers and he's living happily ever after with Lois and her children. Yeah. And that's a great ending for the character. Of all the potential endings for this character, that might be the best. And I like he got some closure because look, Tom Welling was never going to wear the costume anyway.
No.
And you got to give these if you're going to give live action versions closure, that's some great closure. Now, I would have loved, of course, to see him flying around meeting Superman in a suit and all that. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But I think they threaded the needle and given me a very satisfying ending and a button to the show that I loved.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm conflicted by it because I don't mind the idea of him. I think, and for me, like my headcanon has to say the powers, the not having the powers, the living on the farm, doing the family thing. I think I have to tell myself this is temporary. Like
blue kryptonite, not gold kryptonite, huh?
So. Yeah, I do. I really have to go there because I just feel like kind of in the way that like we were saying, like, the Rosenbaum, the Lex losing his memory and all that kind of stuff, or not seeing him in his suit in the finale is sort of a disservice to the fans. I also sort of feel like if we're catching up with him literally at a time where the show was ending, where the end of the show took us, which was like, what
2018, this is like 2020. So yeah.
Right. So we're sort of in that same time frame. Lex is president, like Lex is fucking president. Like,
well, I would say that he defeated Lex.
His powers.
Like, no, I would say that he would defeated Lex, right? His ultimate opponent, right? And then he's in jail or something, right?
But he says
the president.
get Luthor in town. So
well, he's like, I didn't know the president was in town. That's just a statement because you call ex-presidents presidents. And I can fanboy justify this entire thing, Luke. So to me, it works.
They're referring to Lex 100%.
Well, no, they are. But like if Trump, Obama, whoever, right? You would still say, "Oh, I didn't know the president was in town," and they're not the president anymore, right? So that look, man, there are ways. There are ways to look at this, make this thing work.
I don't know if I buy it, but I see the justification. I see the justification. I can get on board with it a little bit. But yeah, I like the kind of the idea that he's got kids and him and Lois are happy and they're having a break. But I'm just like, he's not done being Superman, because all of that stuff that he went through to then like it's a bit like, it's one of the things that annoyed me the most about The Dark Knight Rises is it's like he was Batman for about a year and then stopped in the Nolan movies.
Oh, right? I agree. I 100% agree with you. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we waited all this time, 10 years, people watching this stupid show. It's a great show, not stupid show, being flippant. To then 5 years after the show ends, he hangs up his cape.
2011 to 2019. That's like 8.5 years.
Not long enough. He's Superman for eternity. Also, the show gives it away. The show gives it away that he's Superman forever, because like Smallville has these hints that he is eternal.
In that same episode, they do change fate, so you never know.
Wait, which episode?
That Hereafter, where he touches the guy, you see the cape that goes into like the future, and it's like, this is your end, right?
Yeah.
But they can change fate. I don't know. It's a fun. I'm glad that I'm glad it exists. It has some great conversation that come from it. But I see all points of view. I just happen to like it. So
yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fun. It was fun to see them again. I wonder if we would have seen more of Tom's Superman or Clark had Rosenbaum been in the show, or if they just would have used his Rosenbaum to be the big evil Lex of the.
Yeah, that's its own thing. Who knows, right?
That's a question for someone else that we need to somehow find the answer to at some point. But anyway, we should wrap this up. This is the longest episode of the Secret Circle. Normally these are an hour. We're going 2 hours strong on this one. So it's a supersized episode about Superman and Smallville and all that kind of stuff, because this is actually the first Smallville episode I've ever done. So this is fun to actually be sit and talk about like our love for Superman, love for Smallville, all that stuff. But Zach, where can people find you on the internet if they want to hunt you down and tell you how bad that button is in Crisis on Infinite Earths?
Well, you can find me at Always Smallville, Twitter, Facebook, and we are in, as of this recording, we're in the last parts of season 9, and we'll be covering season 10 this calendar year and wrapping up our episode by episode coverage. So please check us out, and we got a lot of other sister shows and Patreon, all sorts of things. If you really love Birds of Prey like Luke, we got a Birds of Prey coverage on our Patreon as well. We cover the Flash 1990 show over there as well. It's again on our Patreon, and then we got other spin-off shows that are like Arrow and Legends of Tomorrow as well, a podcast. And Superman and Lois, me and my wife do a Superman and Lois podcast, so that's a lot of fun, which only has 10 episodes left. But anyway, Always Smallville with one S. That's where we go. So I look forward to finding some new listeners there. And Luke's been on the podcast before.
Yes.
And we had a lot of good time talking about an episode. It's really fun to just talk about just overall the whole show and all our experiences here, Luke. So thanks again for having me on.
It's my pleasure. And there will be links to your social medias and your podcast in the description of the video if you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening on Spotify or wherever. There will be links there for you to quickly go and follow and listen if you haven't done already. But yeah, this was a lot of fun, Zach, and I'm sure I'll bring you back on for more Superman talk. So there's always more to talk about with Smallville. Always hold on to Smallville. But yeah, thanks for coming on, and I will see everyone next week.
The Secret Circle.